Hello, willkommen, bienvenue, konnichiwa. Time for the Amish Inquisition yet again, episode 382 on Sunday, the 6th of July, 2025. I'm Phil.
And I'm Matt.
And no Ben tonight.
No Ben, he's somewhere.
Somewhere other than here.
He is, yeah.
Yeah, but never fear. Hopefully,
We
on
have
the line, we've got Chris Tolworthy. Are you there, Chris? And can you hear us?
I'm here. Finally.
Yes.
Yes.
No, thanks to my computer.
Yeah, we had some technical gremlins with microphones, but we've found we sort of did a MacGyver. Did you say a bit of improv?
We did, didn't we? It's like 18. Yeah, we took some tape, a phone, and a laptop,
and got it working.
Yeah.
It's been 2.5 years, Chris, since you were last here, and you've been rather busy.
I can't believe this. I thought it was just a few months. Yes, I've been doing a few things up. So, into what I've been doing.
All right, these are hard copies of the books.
Yeah.
Yes, well, 2 of them. The third one I should get finished this month. But we're just talking about the Bible one, so I'm going to resist the temptation to jump onto other topics.
Very good. Yeah. The title is The Bible, It's All True, Eve, Cain, and Our 12,000-Year War Against the Robots.
Yeah.
That's
Do you that sums it up?
yeah, it's quite a what's the word? It's oh my god, I'm having a total brain fart.
Okay. Just take a breath.
Mad?
It'll be okay.
No, it's I want to say inciting, but it's the wrong word.
Oh, right. Okay. Exciting.
Exciting. Well, I suppose exciting. That's just a bit of a lame word. It's one of those everyday words, isn't it? Exciting.
Yeah. Intriguing.
Yeah, intriguing. That'll do.
Okay.
Yeah, as close as my brain can figure out. Because, I thought robots were quite a new development as far as humans were concerned. What makes you think that they were around in biblical
so,
times?
you?
Yeah. Why do you think they were
Yeah,
around in biblical times?
Explain what it is I'm trying to say. Is that, as you probably know, Abraham and Moses basically created the religion of the Bible, and they absolutely hated cities. And they treated cities like beasts. They said they were beasts with 9 teeth and 9 claws, and they trample the world. And well, if you're talking about a beast with 9 claws and it's alive and it's grows and so on, you're basically talking about a robot. And that's my argument: is that cities are robots. They grow, they produce, they have ideas.
Sorry,
they
Chris.
Eat.
Chris.
They defecate. They do everything. They breathe. Everything you think a living thing would do, a city does. And by city, I mean any kind of large organisation, more than 150 people. They all, and it's absurd not to treat them like they're alive because they are alive. And that's what we're talking about the robots. These are great beasts with 9 teeth and 9 claws that trample down the world, according to the Bible. They started 10,000 years ago, about 12,000. There is not.
We're just experiencing some audio Snafus.
Speaking of robots, Chris, you're kind of sounding like a robot through our phone.
Oh no!
So I'm trying to like move the phone closer to the desk or something, because this desk has a Bluetooth connection, but it's notoriously shit. And I don't know whether it's the Bluetooth on our desk or whether it's maybe the mobile phone signal, which is really choppy, or what.
I wonder if maybe I turned the video off here, or no, that wouldn't be that much fun. Yeah, I mean, that is the problem. I live in a forest. We have terrible internet. I've got strict instructions with the cat and everybody else not to use it at the moment. Many times I think it's okay.
That's sounding a bit better already.
Mm.
Oh, okay.
You can tell what you're saying.
Yeah, it was really choppy. It was, audio shite. Yeah. So go again to your description of, go back to what you were saying about cities and how they evolved and the impact they had on early humans.
Yeah.
And we'll just monitor it.
The Bible basically is anti-city. The people who created the Bible hated cities. They describe them as giant beasts with iron teeth and iron claws who trample the world and destroy everything. And my argument is they were right. Because cities grow, they evolve, they reproduce, they learn, they think, they talk, they eat, they do everything that humans do, everything that living things do. Yeah, and they just happen to have and they're getting to be more and more machine. So my argument is that this is AI. I mean, if you want to define AI, it has an input layer, an output layer, and a hidden layer in between. Anything that fulfills those requirements is artificial intelligence, because it does things that you don't know what it's doing, but it has an output. And that's what cities do. As soon as a city grew greater than 150 people, which is Dunbar's number, it became impossible to know exactly what it was doing. All we know is that cities control us, they're growing bigger and bigger, they learn, and they're in control, and they've been in control for the last 12,000 years. But mostly until now, they've been dependent on us, so we thought of them as being passive and safe. That is not the case, and they knew that in the Bible, and they warned about it. So yeah, that's my argument. We have 12,000 years of these living entities that we're thinking of our friends and our helpers, and really they're eating us. They don't care about us. And by cities, I include corporations, religions, any organization of more than 150 people. We, by definition, cannot understand what it's doing, and it is more powerful than us. And the recent improvements in electronics, just the final knife in the coffin, nail in the coffin. The final knife in the cake, whatever the metaphor is.
Oh, man.
Yeah, they hated cities, and they said they were alive, and I think they were right. They were very wise to warn us of them. And there's a lot more to it than that, but are you hearing any of this?
I'm struggling.
Yeah.
I'm really struggling.
I think the audio is making it difficult. Well, the internet, the connection, I think. So I don't know.
I'm wondering if turning the video off would help.
Or whether you might have to call in. Do it that way.
Call in.
Okay.
Yeah. Can you not call into the Zoom?
Oh, yeah. Well, if you've got the Zoom link, if you've got access to your email on that phone, you could try calling into the Zoom.
And then turn your laptop off.
This is terrible.
No.
Oh. I wonder if I can turn the video off on my end,
Yeah.
because maybe it's just using up so much bandwidth.
Mm-hmm.
Possible.
Yeah.
It's worth a shot.
Yeah.
I'll just go to the
Okay.
Zoom.
I've now turned video off, and I'm now rambling away. Does it make any difference at all? Tap, tap, tap. Hello, hello, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Oh,
Sounds the same?
sounds better to
Because
me.
I'm still seeing yours.
Yeah.
It sounds better to me.
Sounds a bit better, doesn't it? Yeah.
Bit better, yeah?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Which what was the
I mean, I
first?
do the entire thing by phone. I can just turn off the meeting if that's
No, it's gone again on it.
Yeah.
It's not better.
So if you try leaving the Zoom.
Yeah. What I'll do.
And we'll just keep you on the mobile.
Mm,
I've now clicked on leave meeting.
yeah.
So in theory, the only bits going from my house to the ether are from this phone.
Yeah.
Sound any different?
It's better.
Yeah,
Do you
Do you
better?
think? Do you think?
it's better, but I think it's dropping in and out. We won't know until you go on a bit of a rant. Which
Yes. I can rant as much as you like.
what's the oldest?
How about I change the subject and talk about the documentary hypothesis? How I came to hate Bible scholarship. Well, I have no respect for it whatsoever.
Yes, go on.
You still there?
Yeah, we're still here.
Yeah.
What's your beef with
Yeah,
Bible
because you're
scholars?
probably wondering why I have these crazy ideas about the Bible.
Yeah.
And mainly it's because when I looked into, I grew up with it, obviously. I was a woman for 34 years. I was a missionary around the local church, read the Bible a lot. Like most people, when I left the church, I started looking into the real scholarship. And I didn't think the scholarship was very good, to be honest. I think official mainstream scholarship of the Bible is really, really bad. And that's kind of interesting and take me down a rabbit hole of why is it so bad? Why is it that scholars didn't? I give lots of examples. And this brought me onto this concept of what's actually going on. Who's really in charge here? Are scholars really these objective people who are just sort of freely going where the Spirit leads them? Or is there something else going on that's guiding them? Basically, who's paying them? Putting it crudely. Oh, by the way, how's the audio? Any coming in and out yet?
It's struggling, to be honest. Do you think, Matt? I'm struggling to follow.
Yeah. We've got
Yeah.
because it's missing out just the odd word, the odd crucial word.
Oh no.
Yeah, that's it's making the whole thing
See,
a little bit difficult. to
My
understand.
mobile phone. Oh no, that's not mobile, is it? That's Wi-Fi. No, my mobile signal looks okay here. What a shit.
Yeah, I'm using Wi-Fi calling here to Gilgamesh Forest. I mean, I could walk down the road and try and do it with a regular phone if you like. But I think I'm maybe trying the patience of your listeners a bit.
Yeah. What a shame. People are getting conspiratorial in the chat. They're saying that when you talk about something interesting, it cuts out. The Bible scholars are listening in on us.
I could record an hour-long monologue if you like and get it to you by Wednesday if that's any help.
Yeah, that sounds good actually.
Yeah,
saves a job.
Yeah.
What a bummer.
And Stig's just turned up as well.
Yeah, Stig's in the chat. This is your opportunity to apologise, Chris, for blocking
It
him.
is. I apologise, Stig. I love you. Wonderful. I'm just really bad with emails. I get overwhelmed very easily with lots and lots of emails and stuff like. And so I basically, it wasn't you personally. I did have 430 people on my Facebook friends, and I cut off everybody apart from immediate family.
Well,
So I'm an anti-social network person, you see.
Right.
well, that's well more than
So
Dunbar's
it's
number,
not
isn't
personal.
it? That's well
I
more
would
than
have had more too. People do ask, but I'm very rude and unsociable.
Yeah. I think we need to.
I loved your recent interviews, Stig, if you're still there.
Yeah, he was at that conference the other week as well. That the Cosmic Tusk puts on.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I forget what it's called now.
Cosmic Summit.
Cosmic Summit. Yes. There was loads of big hitters there.
Sounds good.
Yes. Yeah. I don't think Randall Carlson was there and various other. You know the guys who did that pyramid study? Was it like some form of satellite technology scanning the pyramid underneath it and came up with some
Yeah. When they found a very large
structure underneath.
things underneath
Yeah.
structures.
Did you look into that at all, Chris?
A little bit. I mean, I read a bit of a debunking. People saying, "Oh, noise. Noise. These things don't work." The problem is I don't know enough about it, which is why I tend to stick on things like the Bible. I mean, I feel confident in the Bible. I've read it enough times. I can tell when people are bullshitting me. But I can't really tell with the physics. I mean, I'm actually a trained physics teacher, so you'd think I would. But I don't know enough about it to really know who's saying what. I mean, I know it is normal to debunk these things thoroughly, but you look at debunking in detail, and often it doesn't really stand up. So I really can't say.
Yeah. Well, that audio was quite perfect, wasn't it?
It was, wasn't it? Now try and talk about the Bible again and see what.
Yes.
See if they chop it up again.
But the documentary hypothesis. This is the first time I really started to question Bible scholarship. And this does lead somewhere, I promise you. If you ever read anything about Bible scholarship, the kind of beginner's guide, they always start with a documentary hypothesis. This is based on the idea you start reading the Bible, Genesis chapter 1, the creation of man. Then Genesis chapter 2, you have the creation of man again. And they say, aha, there are two different creations of man, therefore there are two different documents. And that is the hypothesis. There are originally two documents that got mushed together to make one. But then it evolved into sort of 3, 4, 5 documents, one called J, one called E, one called the priestly one called the Deuteronomist, and blah, blah, blah. And scholars have lots and lots of fun cutting the Bible up and trying to recreate these original documents. So far, so good. And everybody believes this, and it's like the foundation that has been for the last 200 years, and it's utter tosh. The reason is, well, even if you didn't know it was tosh, if you read the in Genesis chapter 1, it says, God created man in his own image, and the image of God created he him. So created man in the image of God. Now, man just meant mankind, or a man, a person. The word Adam just meant man, it could be anybody. And then it says, but the Lord God created a man from the dust. So you have the man like God, and then you have another man who's from the dust, who becomes the servant. And that's the way it always worked in every civilization that ever been invented. You get the kings and you get the servants. The kings say, we have a connection to the gods, we are wise, we are clever, we are scientific, we are brilliant, we have our advisors. And you guys are all the workers, and you have to do the work because you're not as clever as we are. And so you always have this two-tier creation. You always have the British Isles, we have the king, the prime minister, they earn a lot of money, they're all very clever. We have our billionaires, they're also smart. And then you have the person who cleans the toilet. It always works this way. So there's nothing wrong, in theory, with having this two-stage creation. You have the man like the gods, then you have the man of the slaves. But anyway, but fair enough, they had this theory that maybe there's two different documents. Okay, maybe they were right, who knows? And that's a documentary hypothesis about these imaginary documents. And then 100 years ago, they found the original documents that were created, that became the Genesis. And the original document is the Amish Inquisition document and so on. They had the same story. They said they had these senior gods who were, well, the senior gods like the sky and the air and one, that's all the forces of nature. You then had the god men, people like Gilgamesh, that kind of person, half god, half man, who were the kings, and they were the powerful people who were like God. And then you had the slaves. It was always that two-stage creation. You always had the god men and the slaves, just like it said in Genesis. And so you'd think that the scholars, having had this hypothesis that there were these hidden J and E multiple sources, and then finding the actual sources that turned out to be just the same as Genesis, you think they'd say, oh, well, we've tested our hypothesis was wrong, going on from there. We have the documents now. But they don't. They still teach a documentary hypothesis, even though it goes against all experience of every civilization ever, even though it's been proven wrong by the actual documents. And they don't want the actual documents. They prefer having their imaginary documents. And that's, my head's swimming. Why do they do this? This is like exhibit A of why I do wonder about scholars. Basically, they don't test their theories. That's my biggest concern. They do not test it. Scientists do, scholars don't. To be a scholar, you've got to basically just say something, never test it. That's the truth, well, that's not the truth. That's not how truth works. So yeah, I do not think much of the documentary hypothesis. They invented imaginary documents. They then found the real documents which contradicted them, and they kept their imaginary documents instead. And that's scholars in a nutshell. There's lots of other examples like that. You still there? You're being very polite.
Yeah, no.
So
we're listening. We're listening.
You sort of choosing what it is, the information to use in order to suit the needs of the situation or the hypothesis. Is that what we're saying?
Well, yeah, but they're calling it a hypothesis, but they're not testing that hypothesis. And when the test results do come up, they ignore them. This is not scientific. This is not how you discover things. They're basically like comic book writers. I mean, I recognize that they're very bad comic book writers. If you're a comic book writer, you have to come up with interesting scenarios, which could be sort of plausible, maybe. But if you're a comic book writer, you don't claim that this is gospel truth. Whereas if you're a bad comic book writer, you can only come up with one or two ideas, and you could become a scholar. Because it's the same principle. You come up with an idea, you never test it, and you say, this is the truth, and this is the foundation of our society. And that's the other thing. We think Bible scholars is a bit of a niche topic. Well, it's not, because up until a few hundred years ago, we were allegedly trying to base our entire civilization on the Bible. And we now base it on the assumption that the Bible is not accurate. And the only way we can say it's not accurate is because the scholars say so. So if the scholars are wrong, then we better start testing this thing again, because they're not testing it. And that's just one example. I'm just not impressed with them. Another trivial, another good example is the Apostle Paul. If you read the New Testament, the Apostle Paul is supposedly the oldest reliable texts we have. They date back to the AD 40s, just sort of 5 or 10 years after Jesus' lifetime. And so the letters of Paul are the gold standard. They're what everybody bases all their theories on. If Paul said it, then that's it. The Gospels were supposedly like 50 years later, but Paul is the bee's knees. And he's utter garbage. And the problem is, scholars literally don't know what they're talking about. See, Paul was a missionary. You've all seen the Life of Brian, I presume, the wonderful documentary by Mr. Python.
Yeah.
And in the Life of Brian, Brian comes up with some ideas, and everybody follows him, because that's what they do. That's the version of religion which the average scholar has. They think that you can come up with these ideas like Jesus is the Messiah, he's going to come again, saved by grace, blah, 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 and everyone's going to follow you. I mean, that works in Monty Python because it's a comedy. In the real world, it doesn't work that way. If you came up and had the Apostle Paul's ideas, nobody would care. You get some people who are maybe a bit desperate or lonely would maybe follow you. You would not be able to make a church based on that. It's absolutely nonsense. I know this because I've been a missionary. I was a Mormon missionary for 2 years. And I discovered very early on that just making great claims counts for nothing. People want an actual reason to believe. Usually you'll provide them with a good social group, friends, people like to have friends. So that's the main reason people join churches. Sometimes you offer them money. For example, Mormonism became very, very big in 1837 in England because there was an awful lot of poor people, and the Mormon missionaries came from America and said, join us, and you can come to America, and you can have lots of land. That's a fantastic offer. Thousands and thousands of people joined. That became the basis. Right, there were more English Mormons than there were American Mormons in the late 1830s, because they were making them an offer that mattered. Mm-hmm. And Paul doesn't make an offer. It doesn't make any sense. And you start looking at the letters of Paul, and something else you notice, Paul doesn't make an offer. It doesn't make any sense. And you start looking at the letters of Paul, is they just suddenly. Now, the idea of a letter collection was it was a fictional concept. I mean, you've seen Dracula, the book Dracula. It's a set of letters. In the days of old, in Roman times, this is a very common thing. If you had something to say, you'd make up a set of letters. And everyone knew it was fiction. And if you look at all the letter collections in the ancient world, at least 90% of them are fiction. If someone comes up to you with a collection of letters, then you can pretty much guarantee it's fake. It's not supposed to be real. And that's what Paul's letters are. And you can go on and on. Nobody had heard of Paul until about 140 AD. They said so. Who is this guy? We'd never heard of him. You can do test after test after test. It all falls down. Paul was invented in about the year 140, i.e. 100 years after he supposedly lived. Now, he was based on a guy called, the guy we now call Simon Magus. This is getting into a lot of detail. So there was somebody, Paul used to be small. There's a guy called Atomos, was the original guy who Simon Magus was based on. Atomos means atom, which also means small. One's Greek, one's Latin. It's the same guy. So what you basically got is Atomos fan fiction 100 years after he lived. And that was the letters of Paul. But the point is, scholars never check. They don't check that everything Paul was doing was just, it's obviously fan fiction. The real world doesn't work that way. People don't join churches the way they said. They didn't check that there's absolutely no evidence he ever existed until 100 years later. They didn't check the fact that everybody said at the time, who is this guy? He's new. And so on and so on and so on and so on. There's loads of different ways you can test it, still don't check. So the entire thing is a house of cards.
So
I mean, I find it so much like this. Like, this is Bible scholarship. And this is why we don't trust this supposedly 10,000-year history, because the scholars tell us not to, but the scholars are talking garbage. I mean, I went deeper and deeper into this stuff. If you try and look at any of their theories and trace them to their roots, the roots are very, very weak. Like I say, I call them bad comic book writers because they just haven't got many ideas. They'll come up with some idea and they'll say, oh, this is the reason this thing happened. And you think, well, I can come up with 10 other reasons why. You know, I want evidence. I want you to test your theory, and they never test it. So yeah, not impressed. I mean, got 100 other examples?
Is it your contention that the New Testament is based off Paul's letters then?
Most of it is. I mean, numerically. Well, my contention is that Mark, the Gospel of Mark, is the only good one, putting it crudely. If you read the Gospel of Mark, there's nothing supernatural in it. We read into it as supernatural, but everything's kind of basic. For example, when Jesus walked on the water, they use the word epi. Jesus walked epi the water. Epi just means near, on, about, around. It's a really very common Greek word. So, I mean, if you look at the original story, the story of Jesus walking epi the water was when Jesus went to bed. All through the night, his disciples were going on a boat across the Sea of Galilee, and there was a terrible storm, and they all thought they were going to die. And Jesus was supposedly 50 miles away, well, probably 10 miles away. And then suddenly, when they were all going to die, Jesus appears and saves them. And it's the most dramatic thing. And if you read the original story, it wasn't the fact that he was walking on water. He didn't walk on water. It was the fact that he was by the water, and he was following his friends. He loved them so much, and he cared for them. That was the story. But in the later versions, they made it all supernatural, like, oh, he can walk on water. No, he walked epi the water. He walked by the water, near the water. Maybe he paddled in the water. He was there for his friends. That's the story. And it's all like this. So, yeah, Gospel of Mark, not supernatural. That's good. The other ones were like 100 years later. Well, the parts of Matthew were actually earlier. It gets complicated. But basically, Mark is not supernatural. It's just history. And I argue it's extremely early, within 5 years of the events. And but yeah, Mark is good. Paul, garbage, very quickly. Revelation is interesting because that was kind of pretty much what it says it is. It's a lot more logical than people think. Again, that's another topic. But yeah, that is my position, that Paul is garbage. 3 out of the 4 Gospels are 100 years after the one that matters. And that's pretty much all of it. Revelation is the other bit, which is kind of interesting. So yeah, it's not what you think when you look into it. You've got to test these things. Back in the testing thing, if you test Mark, it all makes sense. Every single miracle in Mark, I use heavy square quotes in the word miracle, is just ordinary stuff like the walking by the water. You know, raising the dead was just raising somebody who wasn't dead. He says he wasn't dead. You know, but there's a story behind that as well. You know, there's nothing supernatural there. I mean, there's no virgin birth in Mark. You know, there's no resurrection in Mark. It's a story of this really interesting guy who tried to do something amazing. It's a different thing. But then 100 years later, they read to Christianity and said, right now, this guy's a god. He's a miracle worker. He's everything. You know, the guy literally floats in the sky. He can do anything. And it's a different religion. You get Christianity versus Christianity, two very different things. I mean, part of the reason why it worked, I mentioned how you've got to give people a reason to believe. You know, in Mormonism, it was you can make friends, or 100 years ago, it was we'll give you land in America. With Christianity, the big thing was the Roman Empire was in a really bad way. You heard of Commodus, the guy in Gladiator, you know, probably the worst emperor they ever had.
Yeah.
It was the fact that Commodus came in AD 180 that really took off. I go into this in my book. There are reasons why people join. You have to give people a really solid reason. And the reason why Christianity took off was it was basically, if you only rely on reliable sources and get away with all the supernatural stuff, forget the supernatural, look at reliable Roman sources, it's very clear that Christianity was a business club. They had, the earliest sources say that the Christians would get together and have an oath that they would not defraud anybody, because everybody in their area was just lying, cheating. It was just awful. They're the only people you could trust. And that's why Christianity took off. And it all dates 140 to 180. And when 180, when Commodus was there, it was like Christians were the only good people around. And of course it expanded. And then the Roman emperor 100 years later joined, and the rest is literally history. But there are reasons for these things. If you look at reasons for stuff, you get a completely different story than the supernatural, made-up sort of scholarly one that we all get told.
What's your explanation
and
for...
this is what I maybe think I'd rather start looking at this again.
Hang on, Chris.
Sorry?
What's your explanation for Roman persecution of Christians if they were just like a business club?
Well, that's an interesting one. The persecution, well, there wasn't as much as people say. But this is where Paul comes into it. You know, in the gospel in the book of Acts, where it ends with Paul's preaching in Rome, and they don't give his death date. And just kind of like, why don't they all give his death? The reason they don't give his death is he was embarrassing. People didn't like him. He probably died, I think he arrived from memory in Rome AD 62, was crucified or burnt, whatever it was, beheaded, killed by Nero around about AD 66. And by AD 68 is when the Book of Revelation was written. So it's pretty much the Book of Revelation hates Paul. It's really anti-Paul. It's like everything Paul said was, he was the synagogue of Satan, he was not a good guy. They hated him because Paul, remember, was Atomos, who was this magician, the guy who the later pretended was Simon Magus. So, yeah, the persecution was largely because of people like Paul. There were some weird people around at the time, I think so. And they had to create these letters from Paul to try and... he needed a document. If you start in the church, you need to have something written down. If you forgive me going on another tangent, that's another example of how I'm not impressed with the scholars. The official version is that the early church could not read because most people couldn't read in Rome. The average literacy rate was like 1% or something, and the people in the church were quite poor, and so they wouldn't have written everything down. It would have been oral history for the first 50 years. And this is what Bart Ehrman says. This is what most of them say. Again, utter garbage. If you've ever been in the church, they have to have a written source. You can't survive without it. There's a very good scholar, well, he's a scholar as well. I can't remember his name now. But anyway, a guy who specializes in economics has looked into this, the sociology, and he's found every single church that's ever survived, that's been a success, has to start with money and it has to start with writing. You can't do otherwise because you're in competition with existing churches which have writing, have money, and they will squash you and have it. Mormonism is a good example of this. They started off in the Book of Mormon before they had the text. Even though the guy had no money, he had to find somebody who had money, get him to pay for this book, because it's the only way they survive. And that's why they had to have the writings of Paul, because to have any kind of religious organization, you had to have something written. And so he decided to. And the other reason why he had to bring Paul back was how deep down this rabbit hole do you want to go? I'm going to stop you. What was the question again?
It's all right.
You just said hello.
I'm quite surprised by that sort of proclamation that a church requires writing, because logically that would suppose that religions, churches never existed before the invention of writing, 4,000 or 5,000 years ago, whereas I would have thought there's always been a priest class as long as there's been humans.
Yes, well, again, it depends on how you define these things. I mean, well, writing for 3,000 BC, we mean syllabic writing, writing with syllables where you spell every single thing out. So somebody who doesn't know anything about the topic can just sort of say the words because every syllable of the word is there. Before that, they're proto-writing. So they'd have something. The point is that they have to have something to compete with the existing churches. That's my point. If you can't compete with them on the same level, you are not going to survive.
Right.
You have to get your message out somehow, whether it's proto-writing or writing or whatever. And the other issue is, what do you mean by religion? Religion changes radically every 500 years or so. I mean, for example, our present concept of religion is this private belief, and that was invented about 1700. This is a very modern idea. 2,000 years ago, religion was just culture. Isn't it exactly the same thing? The religion of the Jews or whatever you're a Jewish person do because you're born in Judea. The idea of this being something that was really focused on the books was different. But then you wouldn't be in competition either. The idea of competition between religions really kind of began, I'd say, with the invention of money, 500 BC, because that allowed people to do things over a much larger distance. I'm doing this in memory now because I've got my stuff in front of me. But the point is, religions change a lot. Religion now isn't what it was 500 years ago. It's not what it was 2,500 years ago. It's not what it was 5,000 years ago. Originally, it's more like culture. But the general principle stands. It's economics. If you're in competition with a very large group, you better have something that can compete with them, or else they will crush you. That's what it comes down to. And that was the case in Jesus' time. Because if that was a new religion, well, as it was, they had to have something to say. They had to gather their people together. They had to have something to leave with them to kind of gather somebody else. Otherwise, if you just go to somebody and say, hey, the Messiah's here, and then you leave, the next day someone else will go along with the Messiah. And I think Monty Python got that bit right.
Right, yeah.
I'm reading the guy's name now. He's a very famous economist. We're not that famous, obviously. It'll come to me. But testing, if you can't test your theories, they're no better than comic books. And I like comic books. I think there's a lot to be said for it. But let's be honest about what it is.
Right. So all our problems as a species go back to the invention of cities. Is that correct?
Yes, well, technically, all the problems as species go back to the breaking Dunbar's number. Dunbar's number is about number 150. It's the number of people we can form stable relationships with. Well, in my case, the number is about 2. But in most people's case, so it's around about 100, 150 people. If you've got a tribe of that many people, you kind of know who everybody is. You know their parents. You know how they're going to live. You know who you can trust. Once you get above there, you don't know who you can trust. It's just too much hassle. Too difficult. And that was the problem. That's what happened 12,000 years ago. Because of the younger Dryas, then we had the famine. I mean, Genesis chapter 3 describes this in great detail. It's chapter 2? Chapter 2 or 3, I can't remember. Chapter 3, of course, is. Describes the famine and how that forced them together. So then you had more than 150 people. So you didn't know who the good guys were, who the bad guys were. So you needed somebody in charge. And suddenly you've got the hierarchy. And you've got somebody in charge and you don't know exactly what's going on. This is really a recipe for disaster. Well, it's a recipe for lying. Mm-hmm. A clever liar now can have the world as his oyster. Our leaders, the better at lying they are, or better at bullshitting, really, because you don't have to consciously lie. You just have to say whatever will work that day, So you say whatever works. And because we've got more than 150 people involved, we can't quite be sure who's actually telling the truth, because you're not really following everything. If you know the person well, you know if they're lying. But mostly we don't. We don't know our leaders well enough. We don't know their spin doctors well enough. We don't know our doctors, our journalists. We just don't know enough people, and that's the problem. And once you get more than 150 people, then you've got some guy owning all the land and telling you what to do. It's a recipe for all sorts of evils. So basically, Pandora's box. I mean, quite literally, Pandora's box. That's what the story of Pandora's box was. Back in the ancient Greek times, he started. Was that the Silver Age or the Bronze Age? Again, I'm doing this from memory. But yes, the big thing: 150, beat 150, more than 150 people. All the problems of the world. I mean, you've got problems otherwise, but if you know all the people around you and you know who you can trust, you can solve most problems. But if you don't know who you can trust, you're asking for trouble. You're asking for systems which are going to evolve. That's the other thing. You may have more than 150 people, and you as a person might not know what's going on. And maybe no human knows what's going on, but stuff is still going on. Systems are still evolving, whether we control them or not, whether we think we control them or not. These systems still continue. They still have the pressures. They still grow, evolve, reproduce. That's what I mean by these things are robots. They are part biological and they are part mechanical. And as time goes on, they become more and more mechanical, more and more powerful. I mean, for example, this morning I went to work. I went through the front door of this building. I'm basically walking into the jaws of a robot. This building I work at, it's got electric lights, it's got computers, cables through it. It's a living, breathing thing. It's a breathing thing. It's got AC. Sorry.
And
I spoke to that.
You're a cog.
A bee has suddenly appeared in front of me. Wasp. Oh, hello, Mr. Wasp.
The phrase of being a cog in the machine is very apt, isn't it? When you think of like a corporation.
Yes, exactly. That's what we are. Yeah, it's something we don't want to face. We talk about religious people being supernatural. There's a supernatural belief. It's a belief that somehow we're in control. How can we be in control of something we do not understand? We have all these tricks and so on, but this thing is control. These systems exist for their own benefit. They did not exist for our benefit. Often they've got to cooperate with us. In the past, they had to cooperate with us a lot. And every now and then they'll collapse. There's a great book called, what's it called? Not with me. Anyway, the point is, the only times these systems will ever cooperate with us a lot is when they collapse. For example, World War II, World War I, and the Great Depression utterly decimated the systems of the world. And they were desperate, and they had to be nice to people for a little while. And then that's the 50 years after that, the baby boomers got the benefit of that. And it wasn't because all the leaders of the world and the cities decided to be nice to people. It's because they were in trouble.
I've got this radical idea of universal healthcare for all. And we'll call it the National Health Service, because we need to keep you lot alive a bit longer, because we've lost too many of these cogs recently in certain events.
Yes, exactly. That's what it is. They're not doing it for our benefit. They're doing it because they've got to. Because it gets them what they want.
They have to get the system. They have to get the system off life support.
Yes, precisely. And particularly 100 and so years ago, they're just in creating these machines. They were in competition with other governments. And, Britain was in competition with Germany. Germany was in competition with France, and so on. And they were scared because whichever entity got the most machines could then smash all the other ones. So yes, they'd have to get people trained and healthy, and they needed to look after their people, but only for the minimum necessary. As soon as they can find a way to not look after us, they will. I mean, it's a difficult concept. Our ancestors do this because they're animists. They knew that everything's alive. Our idea that only humans are alive or only certain things are alive is garbage. Everything has information. Everything has its own processes. Everything has its own behaviors. And our ancestors understood this. And they knew if you get anything bigger than humans, you're in trouble, because that thing's more powerful than you. That will eat you. That will kill you. That will chew you up, spit you out, replace you. And it's just, I look at the world like, why does nobody see this? Why are we creating things more powerful than us? And the sisters are telling us that they're good for us, and they're going to help us, and how nice they are to us. We believe in them. What, are we mad? Well, yes, and that's another part of my theory, but that's another topic.
Well, these things are often sold as a convenience, aren't they?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, they'll sell it in whatever way it works. These things are smarter than us. If nothing else, they've got humans working for them who have nothing else to do than find ways to spin and advertise what they're doing. So, yeah, it's something we don't like to admit. These things are smarter than us, bigger than us. They tell us whatever will work.
Would you consider yourself an anarchist then, Chris?
I'm an anarcho-primitivist, and I'm proud of it.
Anarcho-primitivist? That's a new one on me. So explain that term for people.
Well, basically, you're saying everything was better. I wouldn't say in the Stone Age, because the Stone Age was pure propaganda. That was invented in 1830. They used to call it the Golden Age for good reason.
Yep.
That was a time when, I mean, imagine the world now. Well, when you think of hunter-gatherers now, you probably think of someone in the desert, because we kicked them off the good land. Imagine, though, if we're all hunter-gatherers, there's only like 5 billion of us in the whole world, so we all had the best possible land. We all chose the loveliest beaches and a nice stream, nice weather, because we had the choice of the whole world. Now, that's the kind of people we're talking about. Well, life was good. Now, Sitches, of course, have spent a long time trying to persuade us that life back there was nasty, brutish, the solitary, poor, nasty, brutish, and short.
Yeah.
Because we had this big problem in the 1700s when people in Europe were conquering the world, and they kept coming across these old, primitive, so-called primitive societies. And they said, these people are nicer than us. They have better lives than us. I thought we're the advanced ones. We're miserable, and these people are happy. And the famous example is New York.
Sorry, say again.
Sorry?
You just broke up then. Say again. What's the famous example?
The mutiny on the Bounty. Mutiny on the HMS Bounty.
Of course.
When the Captain Bligh is taking his, you got the oppressed, ganged sailors, not a nice life, miserable life, going to get breadfruit so they can feed their slaves. And they stop off at Tahiti. It's 1789. And the sailors say, hang about, these primitive people, they have a great life. They're just eating and doing whatever they want. And I'm the advanced British person, and I've got a shitty life. Something's wrong here. And that's when they... It's kind of funny, actually. The French, was it Paris? Basically, the top scientific organization in the world, it's all in my book, had a competition. They wanted somebody to prove that Europe was better than these savages, because it was a real problem. The Europeans were discovering savages and finding out that European life was not as good as the savage life. And I say savages, these people were better educated than us as well. And so that's when they started inventing. Rousseau, I think he won the competition with his nasty brutish, but that came a bit later. But the point is, it was a deliberate attempt to persuade us that the life in the Golden Age was horrible, and that life in our modern cities, these dark satanic mills, that this was a good thing. And so they had a competition and they won it, and Rousseau became famous. And it's utter nonsense. It's all spin and propaganda. And then the cleverest thing, I mean, I call this guy the greatest magician who ever lived, a guy called Christian Thompson, who invented the Stone Age. Because people were looking back at the Golden Age. They called it the Golden Age of the Egyptians. Egyptians called it the Age of the Gods. The Bible calls it Paradise in the Garden of Eden, and so on and so on. It was a very, very good thing. We knew it got worse. We knew life used to be better. But Christian Thompson in 1830, he had a brilliant idea. He noticed that the only things that survived from back then are made of stone. Of course, because things are made of wood, then sort of rot, So he said, well, why don't we call it the Stone Age? Because all the tools that we got that's surviving are made of stone. So it's the Stone Age. And that was such a brilliant thing. With a single word, he persuaded people that the Golden Age was now this dusty, stone, primitive, caves, nasty, brutish sort. It's a brilliant piece of propaganda. It really was. So yeah, I'm an anarcho-primitivist. I think everything was better. It's simplifying it. If nothing else, if something went wrong, you could fix it. Because there's nothing more powerful than you, up until 12,000 years ago. So yeah.
Yeah, it's such a... We look back at this Stone Age and we think of Ugg, like the cartoon of the guy dragging his female by the hair, beating her over the head with a club and dragging her back to the cave, and it separates.
Yeah, I mean that's no accident. That was deliberate propaganda.
It separates us from our history.
I mean, calling that a Stone Age is crazy. I mean, if you look down wherever you're sitting now, I'll bet underneath the floor is concrete. We have far more, 1,000 times more stone now than they did back then. I mean, we are now in the Stone Age. We're living in an age where everything is stone. Everywhere you look, it's concrete. And that was the age of life. That was the age when you had grass and living things everywhere. Yeah, I'm quite a man. Yeah, the other big thing is too, because people say, "Oh yeah, but they died at the age of 30." Well, yes, he has a lot. Sorry.
Bullshit.
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly. But then the other point I make in my Atlantis book, go into this in some detail, is that they were immortal. They had a different attitude to life. Because we have this crazy idea that we are so different from every other animal, we get terrified of death because we think, well, once we die, we're gone, Whereas if you recognize that we are basically dust, we are just the same as that stuff, then the fact that you die and turn to dust, no big deal, Dust has got a very interesting life. So the fact that they were immortal, they knew that life continued because life wasn't what we think it is. Life is being part of this great big system, this great ever-changing universe. I mean, for example, when I die, I hope I get cremated because I want to experience life out there. I want to be light and heat and dust and,
Can you
a whole huge other topic, what is consciousness?
That separation of humans from the rest of the animal kingdom or nature as a whole, can you put that down to Genesis and the sort of subdue the world, the being the sort of the caretaker of the world, that permission that we're granted by God in Genesis?
I put it down to Hilkiah. Hilkiah, how do you pronounce it? He was the high priest in 600 BC who basically recreated Judaism. And that was when they created the final versions of their scriptures. So if you look at, we've got the source materials of most of Genesis. If you look at all the, I mentioned the Atrahasis epic, the Gilgamesh epic, Enuma Elish, all these. If you look at the source materials of Babylon, you can kind of see where they're coming from when they make various claims. But they rewrote it. So it's still the same story, but they really started emphasizing this conquest and power, and that this was bad. This was the city way of looking at it. And that was never the original plan. I mean, to be fair, we did when we were back in the Golden Age before 12,000 BC, when we were hunter-gatherers, when life was good. We did conquer the world, but on a human scale. What they did afterwards, but in the days of Hilkiah and so on, when he worshipped Siddiq, if you Melchizedek, the king of Siddiq.
Yep.
It was when it became a city-based religion. I mean, that's another thing. Religions, they reinvent themselves every 500 years. It's almost like clockwork. And every 2,500 years, you have a really big change. Their big change in about 500 BC was Hilkiah destroying all the old worlds and basically making this a city-based thing. Cities are all about conquest and control. They really lent into this and emphasized this. And that became like the official view. But that wasn't the view originally. If you look at other documents. No, I mean, it's just the fact that we were like gods. We had control of all the animal kingdom. But we weren't trying to concrete everything over. We weren't trying to create cities of thousands of people. We weren't trying to reach the moon. All this stuff is new. And we say Hilkiah was probably the high priest at the time of Josiah. You've heard the reforms of Josiah. Anyone who's read the Bible have heard of the reforms of Josiah. Supposedly a good thing. I'm saying these are a really bad thing. Yeah, they reinterpreted and reinterpreted and reinterpreted again. This is why it's so important to get back to the things you can test. Go back to the original documents, get back to sociology, economics, try and see how anything you can test it. And that's my argument. And if they don't test it, then they're no better than comic writers. Well, they're worse than comic writers. Comic writers are usually quite honest about the fact they're making it up.
How do you think the first large settlements or cities formed? For what reasons?
Well, according to Genesis, I mean, that seems to be supported by the Younger Dryas, famine. They said that there came a time when there wasn't any water. I mean, there's that odd line in Genesis about how a mist rose up because there was no rain. That was the problem. They had to follow the rivers back to their source because they knew that there was always water there. And that was the Garden of Eden, the Lake Gilgamesh basin. David Roll was very good on this one, by the way.
Which basin? Sorry, which basin was that? I missed it.
Lake Urmia.
Urmia.
If you look at the origins of the River Euphrates, the Tigris, and a couple of others up there, in the mountains between the Caspian Sea and the other one. You see, the origins of Euphrates, you got there, Lake Urmia basin, it was a very nice place. Even in the famine, there was water there. But because so many tribes had to gather together, of course, then you had the beginnings of kingship. Somebody had to be in charge. And that's the slippery slope. Once somebody is in charge, they don't like giving it up again.
So would you say that does that happen when it gets above 150, then 150 people?
Yeah, if more than 150, you can't keep track of everything.
Okay.
You can't. Society is no longer stable. So the one solution is to have a king. I mean, you really saw this in 3000 BC. If you look at DNA evidence, between about 5000 and 3000 BC, 16 out of every 17 males did not have children. And the only reason they can find is they were constantly at war. And this is just what the Bible says. Obviously, they're summarizing thousands of years very quickly. We had the era of Cain. Cain means the Quain, which means the metal workers, who were making more and more tools, more and more weapons. It was just constant warfare over land for thousands of years. And it got so bad that eventually, about 3000 BC, you had these sort of super kings appeared. In fact, thanks to writing made it possible. And that's when you have Egypt settling as we know it today. And that's when you have the Mesopotamia as we know it today. And that is why it says in Genesis that the people finally decided to worship God again, i.e. they were going to go submit themselves to these kings for their own survival. Because there was so much warfare over land, and that creates stability, but the price of stability was you become basically a slave. I mean, you might have a good king for some whatever reason, or you might be able to have some sort of compromise situation. It's not all slaves are equal. But yeah, it's lots of violence because there's more than 150 people and you need a strong king. The strong king does things for his own benefit, not for your benefit. This is the whole problem. Conflict is the natural state of nature. If you get somebody powerful, the powerful one will take advantage of the weak one, even if they don't intend to. They might not realize they're doing it. They might be taking advantage of their privilege, as let's just say. But
so
more than 150 is a pot. That's my position.
So explain to us how the Cain story and of him going to the land of Nod, whatever. How is that? How does that written? How does that pan out in real history?
Right, well, Cain just means the metal workers. Quain, Qayin. Because copper and coppersmiths. If you had copper, it was obviously you could make better weapons. You could make sharper tools. Well, no, not sharper. They last longer. It was the secret to all sorts of things. If you look in the Bible too. It says that Cain, his descendants, they created cities, they created music, they created basically everything we call culture. They were the sort of scientists of the day. And yeah, that's how it works out. They call it the Bronze Age reason. Well, originally they called it Bronze Age because it was worse than the Silver Age. Yeah. But again, this guy, Christian Thompson, who invented the Stone Age, they used a lot of bronze at the time as well, so that's really convenient. And in the Iron Age, you use a lot of iron, so that's really convenient. So, as the bronze allowed weapons, and bronze allows all sorts of changes, and it really helped kings and anybody who wanted power over somebody else, anybody who wanted change, anybody who wanted to do things, anybody who wanted to be a big man, a Lugal, as they later called them, the ones that are the giants. People like your billionaires today, the people who feel they're totally above everybody else because they got technology. I mean, today the technology is the internet or spaceships or whatever. Back then, your technology was bronze. So it made a huge difference. I mean, that's why the scientists in today call it the Bronze Age. And it wasn't necessarily good for people.
There must have been other benefits to people like living in the early cities other than just security, though, was there not? Otherwise, would they have not just left?
Tell you that.
What would they have not just left the city and continued their nomadic lifestyle, or had they already forgotten what life was like before the Younger Dryas?
Well, this is what the Gilgamesh epic is all about. If you leave a city, you're a threat. If there's people living nearby on good land, the city wants your land. And what the city has that the hunter-gatherers don't have is armies. So, and Gilgamesh is great. But the whole point of the Gilgamesh story was, I forgot what his name is now. Yeah, you remember the big guy, Gilgamesh, who was a hunter-gatherer. He had a great old life. And Gilgamesh saw him as a threat because this guy was actually stronger and fitter and more desirable than him. Whereas Gilgamesh spent a lot of effort in presenting himself as being the greatest, the most handsome, the smartest, the most powerful.
So he could not allow. Was it Upnapishtim?
No, Upnapishtim, that was the Noah character.
Oh.
Again, it'll come to me. Somebody's probably typing it right now. Gilgamesh and Thingy. And Shamash was the woman, but anyway, the point is that there was this hunter-gatherer who was very strong and just very exemplary, so they had to get him into the city because his existence was a threat. It's very much like today with America. If you get some little country that's got a really nice thing going and all socialist and all happy, that is a big threat because you're not supposed to have that sort of thing. It's not supposed to be possible. So in that case, what Gilgamesh did was he had a charm offensive, and he called the other guy in and said, "Look, we'll give you lots of sex and lots of food and lots of wine. Isn't it great? And come and live with us." And at the end of the day, the other guy died of a disease and said, "I wish I'd stayed as hunter-gatherer." So that's one thing they did, but mostly just war because they want the best land. Cities take the best land and they kick the hunter-gatherers off into the desert. And if the desert's got any good qualities at all, the cities will expand and create farms there. And that's how they expand this, because the cities have the armies. I mean, I call it the zombie apocalypse. It's the real zombie apocalypse. Your average city person was shorter, weaker, punier, unhealthier. They weren't as good at anything than the hunter-gatherers, but there's a lot more of them. They breed. I've been saying these things were live. They are breeding us as farm animals. They want lots and lots of people to work on the farms. So you can have an army of 1,000 people, and you say you have hunter-gatherers of, say, 150 people. 1,000 people are going to beat 150 people, especially if 1,000 people have iron and bronze weapons. It doesn't matter that the 150 people are healthier and got a better life. Yeah, you ain't got bronze weapons. You ain't got 1,000 people. The cities also will present it as being good because it's propaganda. It's like today, aren't we lucky to live in the West? Aren't we lucky to be modern? Aren't we lucky to have to work every day and pay for things that used to be free? I mean, I really recognize this because I used to be a Mormon, and every Sunday you always talk about how lucky you are to be a Mormon, how you're more blessed than everybody else. And once a month they have a thing called Fast and Testimony meeting, where the whole meeting you just get up and say how lucky you are and how blessed you are. And if you ask Mormons, they'll always tell you how happy they are. And they always come at the top of the list of happy people because they know that's what they're supposed to say. And yet they also come at the top of the list of people who take antidepressants. And I thought, this is just exactly as life is. We're always told how lucky we are. We've got iPhones, we've got airplanes. Aren't we the best and luckiest people ever? And yet we also have people are so miserable, we've got to physically prevent them from killing themselves. Like, something doesn't add up here. It's all propaganda.
Another thing people will push back on is things like medicine. But again, most of the diseases that we routinely get were caused by our living in close proximity with animals, and then they create zoonotic diseases which spread, and all of a sudden you have plague.
I agree that there will be some advantages. I mean, for example, if you want to go fishing and you want to catch a fish, you've got to give them a worm, and that's a worm you wouldn't have got otherwise. So yeah, we do have certain medicines I'm sure you wouldn't have. I mean, a good hunter-gatherer will know an awful lot of roots and branches and things. So yeah, we got some things, but look at the cost. I mean, I can now get penicillin if I want to, but I've got to work every single day. I mean, I'm lucky I'm in Britain, so I've got the NHS, what's left of it. But in America, you get your penicillin, but it's going to cost you like $37,000 or something, and you'll be super obese, probably. You'll be feeling sick your whole life just because of the way you're eating. It's swings and roundabouts. Yeah, they use some things as bait to get us in. So you got to look at the bigger picture.
I was just wondering. So, yeah, I think there's a thing there, isn't there? I think I've read about, on average, people are working. They say, don't they, that people are working longer hours, and and I've certainly read that about the USA, that rather than hours going down, with efficiencies around technology, that they're actually going up.
Yes.
But other than the propaganda, is there something, I suppose, that cities offer in terms of appeal to people that live there? Or is it all just... I'm just wondering if in some ways they appeal to potentially our, what you might call bad qualities, I guess.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Maybe lots of sugar. You can get heroin, you can get anything like... the big thing was beer. The story of the... If you look at the... I'm trying not to get into the Atlantis topic, but if you look at the Egyptian version of the Atlantis story, how they stopped the one that they call the destruction of mankind, the way they finally stopped the destruction was by offering everybody beer. And this is always the way, a very, very common thing. Grain. If you've seen the book Against the Grain by Professor James C. Scott. James Scott, I think. It's a superb book about how the kings like grain because it's very easy to tax. The grain is also good for beer. And that was one of the things they'd offer. I mean, that's what Gilgamesh offered. Oh, his name's going to come to me. I'm going to kick myself. It's a very famous name. Yes, thank you.
Thanks, chat.
I think it's Enkidu.
Yeah.
Gilgamesh offered him and said, look, wine, and I mean, main thing offered him was sex. He gets sent to temple prostitute, who was the best of the best. And after 7 days, he decided, maybe I'll try this. No, they're very good. It's a sugar principle. Whatever it is that you want, the city will refine it to such a degree that you're addicted to it. And then you realise that the cost, that there's a reason why we don't eat lots and lots of sugar in the wild. It turns out it's not as good. I mean, I just had a birthday and I've got so many sugary things. I've even reached my own limit of sugar. I can't believe this. That's never happened before. I'm getting old. So yeah, it offers all sorts of things. It'll offer anything. I mean, it's bait. It'll offer you really shiny things, iPhones, for example. It could be penicillin, you name it. The beer is the sort of the good catch-all one, because that's always been the case from thousands and thousands and thousands of years ago. Because they produce as much beer as they like. It's a limit how much beer you can produce if you're nomadic. Whereas if you've got a full-time distillery or whatever, or a brewery, that's the word I'm looking for.
Would you know?
Another thing, I mean, to be fair, I'm a great fan of Jack Kirby, and someone asked him, so what happens if we become like part of this cogs in the machine? He said, well, you'll like it. You do get used to it. If you're brought up this way, eventually, you just happy with it, won't you know any difference? And that'll become our normal life. So,
well, does that thing
if that already works for you, good on you.
The in and out group thing will happen, won't it? In terms of you'll start to view people who live an alternative, well, you will be called now, wouldn't it, an alternative lifestyle, who might have a small holding or whatever, and you'll look on that and you'll think, yeah, why would I ever do that? Because I can live in my house in a city or whatever. That's a natural tendency.
This is a common theme in science fiction. There's several stories about this. You have a world ship and they're going towards their Garden of Eden, and when they finally get there, 5 generations later, they hate it because they're so used to living in the ship.
Yeah.
So yeah.
What do you think about? What do you think about the Amish? Do you think maybe the Amish have got going along the right idea?
They do what they can. Well, that's the thing. Also, ultimately, I think the answer has to be sharing land, or sharing the value of land, because it's not practical to steal the land and give it to other people. That's been tried. That doesn't work. We share the value of the land, yeah. But yeah, anything which gets us back to living like we're supposed to live. Because the happiness doesn't come from the technology. That's the thing. You think of what someone's ideal life is. It's probably like living on the beach without any worries. It's not the iPhone. It's not the car. It's having the friends and whatever. And if the Amish can get closer to that, then go for it.
Most of the things in modern life are stress
sorry?
inducers. The stress inducers.
Yeah. Well, I suppose the thing that was on my mind was this idea of unintended consequences. In that, you know, I don't know, you know, like you're saying, if perhaps it's a byproduct of communities getting over a certain size, and then that creates the need for a king, and therefore, you know, there's order and so on and so forth, war. I wonder if any of that was ever intended at the outset, you know.
Yeah, I think very little is intended. I mean, I have quite extreme views on a lot of things, and one of them is consciousness. I think we're a lot stupider than we think. A lot stupider. That's why it doesn't bother me becoming dust. I think dust is probably more intelligent than humans, but that's another topic. Yeah, all unintended, pretty much all of it. We have a great. I mean, you gave the example earlier, or your colleague, or esteemed colleague, of we think we'll have more free time. I mean, I was brought up in the 70s. We were always hearing about how with technology we have so much free time. It'll be our biggest problem. What will we do with our free time?
Yes,
it doesn't happen that way. The unintended consequence is you just get more work put on you. There's all these things that happen that we don't expect. That don't happen how we think they'll happen.
Yeah. I've read articles about hunter-gatherers having, you know, pretty much like 12, 16 hours a day to do what they want.
Mm.
Yeah, and also, I mean, what we call work. I mean, if you're gathering something, you're talking to your friends, you know, is that really work? If you're out hunting, we like hunting, shooting, fishing. Well, we like sort of finding interesting things and just faffing around and having a laugh. That's just what we do.
People on a Sunday in their downtime go fishing
and hunting.
Hunting as a recreational thing. It's obviously not work, is it?
Exactly, yes.
I read an article about Kellogg, as in Kellogg's. And apparently...
Oh, yes, the crazy guy. Yes.
Yes. Apparently, I think it was in the 1920s, or... No, in fact, it was in the 1930s, after the Great Depression, he reduced working hours in his factory. And it was seen as a great thing, basically. So it was like, I can't remember if it went down to like 5 hours a day or something like that. And it was like championed in the press that, look, this is great because we can employ more people, because you can fit in 24 hours or whatever, you know, you could have 5 shifts instead of 3. And that's 5 people employed instead of 3. And they're paid the same amount of money. And then that was kind of slowly died out, apparently. This kind of push, and it was all around automation, like what you were saying, in terms of, you know, technology is supposed to be labor saving, and there seems to be the opposite happening, where we're working longer and longer and longer.
We're working for the machines.
Yeah, basically, and you know, everything's getting more and more efficient, but it's based on the premise, isn't it, of perpetual growth in the market.
Yeah.
And you can't have that without people generating more wealth and more consumption, essentially.
Yeah. I mean, efficiency is another good example of an unintended consequence. I can't remember, there's a famous law whereby if you make your cars more efficient, you'll just have more cars. You don't actually save on fuel.
Mm.
It's like the light bulb.
I can't remember the name of it is.
Yeah.
It's like the light bulb. There's a light bulb. Is it called Old Faithful in that fire station in New York? Yeah. That's 100 years old or whatever.
Yeah.
And it was really, it's just a really well-made light bulb. Whereas now they've pushed us onto these cheap Chinese LEDs.
Yeah.
That break after 6 months, even though they're meant to last 10 years.
Yeah.
It's a sham. Yeah. We're driven by consumption, and the market, like you said, Matt, the market has a lot to answer for. We need to sustain perpetual economic growth on a finite planet with finite resources. And it's got to go bang at some point.
Yes. Exactly, yeah. I mean, the incentives are not for humans. Their incentives are for something else. I mean, a good example of this, I made a little website yesterday about my book. You know, I just wanted to have a picture of the book and a link, that's all. And I tried to get it automated. And I did it on Word, and so I uploaded it somewhere, so I won't turn it into a website. And this thing was so bloated, I couldn't believe it. I thought, why are things so bad? You know, I think there's 5 megabytes for the the web page or something. It was just endless code. I couldn't believe I finally hand coded it. Like we did back in the old days, like a hunter-gatherer version of a website. Not quite. I got down to 2 kilobytes from 5 megabytes.
Oh.
Yeah. I want to go
off the topic there.
Yeah, we're drifting all over the place, which is fine. But I want to try and talk a bit more about the book. Some of the bullet points I've made. Was Abraham really Cronus, which is a Greek god, as I understand, a time god? So
yes,
what's all that about?
That's a great example of scholars not looking. Now, I remember when I was young, hearing from scholars that Abraham was obviously either didn't exist or he's some minor warlord,
Abraham, yeah.
And yet, it's supposedly called the tradition like this massively important character in history. Well, Abraham lived in and then lived in Haran for a while. Haran was like his base of operations. That's what they always went back to, anything important to do.
Yep.
And he lived about 1800 to 2000 BC, whatever it was. So you can look. They don't look. If you look in the area around Haran, you look to so around about 1800 BC. The famous one calls it Kumar and Tishub, I think, from memory. We've got the story of Abraham there, but they don't recognize it because they assume he's not real. Now, if you assume he's not real, you can believe anything you like about him. But if you assume he's real, then you've got to try and time events. And the more you time to real events and look at the older versions of the story, the more you realize this is the same story. They had the story there. And it also then, if you look at the Cronus story, you go back to it, it's the same story. Point by point, the same person, the same dates, the same names, the same events, you name it, everything was the same. The first time I noticed this was when I was reading the, who are those?
Just to stop you there,
I'm really bad at names.
Was it Cronus who ate his own children?
Yes.
So how does that relate to Abraham?
We're told,
is that linked to Abraham? Well, he didn't sacrifice Isaac, though, did he? How does that link?
We say he didn't in the version we have. But basically, Abraham, we're told Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob were all very friendly and all the same and all like the same thing. Garbage. If you look at it closely, Abraham went native. Abraham was supposed to conquer the whole of the Middle East. He got there and decided, I don't like this idea. I'm on with them. And remember, Abraham ended up as a nomad. You know, being a local nomad was the thing. Remember the case of Sodom and Gomorrah when he's arguing with the gods, i.e. the people from back in Ur. And I didn't really want to kill these people. And if I can find just 5 decent people, you'll let me not kill them. Okay, I'm going to let you not kill them if you find 5 decent people. He went native. Abraham decided he liked the old ways. He liked being a hunter-gatherer, not quite a hunter-gatherer. I mean, a nomadic herder was the closest he could get back then. Like you say with the Amish. The Amish aren't hunter-gatherers, but it's probably the closest we can get now. Back then, the closest you could get being a hunter-gatherer was a nomadic herder. And that's what Abraham wanted. Whereas his children, particularly Jacob, and Joseph especially, they wanted the opposite. He was fighting against them. He's all in the book. They were enemies. So yeah, you say eating them. I mean, a lot of these stories, the earlier versions, it's more like they were enemies and he was trying to stop them and trying to kill them and trying to prevent them. And very much Abraham was on the old side, and Jacob and Joseph on the new side. I mean, Joseph means growth. Joseph is archetypal, grow forever, and he was the one that conquered Egypt. Like he wanted them to bow down to him, and it was an absolute disaster. I mean, what I was going to say. I had my bullet points what I was going to talk about, all completely out the window. One of them was that, because I'm basically saying that Joseph was a nasty piece of work. And when they took over Egypt, it was an absolute disaster. And this is why you don't hear about the golden age of Egypt in the end of Genesis. They just sort of skip over that bit because it was horrendous. And they had to get rescued by the Egyptians. But yeah, in answer to your question about eating his children, they were enemies. Abraham and Jacob and Joseph was very, very much opposites. Joseph wanted cities, he wanted power, he wanted growth. And Abraham just wanted to be a nice little herder, going back and forth across the desert and seeing his friends.
Does the Old Testament not portray Abraham as a wealthy guy, though? Like the head of a clan, lots of slaves and herds? And is he not antithetical to the... he sounds like a big man, a Lugol.
Yes, at the beginning, yes, he was. He was very big at the beginning. That's why he was the one who was supposed to conquer the whole of Canaan. And he's tried it for a bit. And then you can sort of see step by step the guy is going native. And like, I'm not going to do this anymore. And the thing I would point out is that 2 generations later, remember when Jacob sold his birthright to Esau for a bowl of stew?
Yep.
You know, this guy who's supposedly so wealthy, he was very wealthy at the beginning. You know, sold these slaves and camels and everything. Oh, camels is another issue. The camel is supposedly the proof that this thing wasn't old, but camel was an exotic thing which Abraham had because he was a nomad who traded with Arabia, where they did have camels, and he used the camels as proof of his wealth. But yeah, by the time at the end, he'd been completely rejected by the wealthy people who originally wanted him to be their local king. And, you know, his entire wealth was worth a bowl of stew. Yeah, that's what it came down to. It's all in the book. Yes, he was very, very wealthy, but he rejected it. And you can see step by step by step how he went against it all.
That highlights...
later on, the guy...
Sorry, Chris. That highlights the sort of the fallacy of wealth. Like, I don't care how much money Elon Musk has on a spreadsheet. If he's starving, he will give it all up for a bowl of stew.
Yes, that's right. And then Abraham is remembered by so many characters as someone they absolutely love, and they respect him and admire him because he was like that. You know, who wouldn't want to be remembered as the greatest guy ever and just have so many friends and be beloved by everyone? That's not a bad life to have.
How does like Abraham's calling work into real history then? Because the covenant, you know, the establishment of the covenant. Then, you know.
Yes, well, you got to ask who are the gods? Who's talking to him?
Yes,
and the gods were
now,
always
just to clarify,
people.
When you say gods,
Yes.
is this because are you using like a translation of Elohim as a plural?
Yes.
Got you.
Yes.
Right.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, and again, comparing it to the source material, the older texts we have that it was clearly based on. I'm sure there are some texts we don't have still, but we've got so many now that are so similar. And see how, the gods are just the rulers of Ur. Ur failed. And that was the whole point of the Ark story. The civilization failed. It was after disaster, and for a couple of hundred years after the fall of Sumer, and Akkad didn't do too much. It was just a failures, but they still had the people there who still believed that they could make this place the greatest kingdom on earth. And so they were the ones who said to the gods, the priests collectively, however they got together, they were the ones who said to Abraham, "Look, you conquer Canaan, you can have it all. You have from the rivers to the sea. You know, you can have the whole world. Conquer it for us, because we're not doing very well here. We need to conquer it. We need somebody to go out and make our dream work."
So in real historical terms then, does the story of Abraham fall before Sargon comes along and takes over?
Oh, no, after. Sargon was... Yeah, I mean, the flood was 2348 BC. Or 2348 pretty much. Yeah, no, Sargon was like 5 years later, because the Sumer collapsed, or 10 years later. He then has success a little while. You know, his grandson, Naram-Sin, was the first guy who said, I am a god. And that's when it really collapsed.
Right, after a few generations.
And after that, you had it's just about 100 years of it. No, that was 100 years when the Gutians, how could I forget the Gutians? The Gutians, who were utterly hated, of course, the city people versus the country people. I found the Gutians. They're the ones that took over, and they released all the animals because they didn't believe that anybody should be a slave, not even an animal. I love that. But eventually they got reconquered. But it was just kind of messy until Babylon came along, like 100 years later. And that's the period when Abraham was there. They say to Abraham, like, can you go and... We're not doing anything good here. The Middle East, Mesopotamia is a mess. Canaan, we've heard that Canaan is good. We know Canaan is good because that's the Phoenician capital. Please conquer Canaan for us, and we promise you everything. You've got to do it. And you had the wars of the kings. And then he sees how bad it is, and then he slowly changes sides. The Bible doesn't say he changes sides, of course. I mentioned Hilkiah rewriting it in the 500s BC. They were really trying to say that cities were great and power is great and inequality is wonderful, and Abraham was one of us. No, he wasn't. He really wasn't. At the beginning, he was. But you see his actions, see how his wealth went down, how his sympathy for all the other people went up, and you then see the similarity. Yeah.
So we've touched on the similarities between Cronus and Abraham. Can we move on to
download the book? It's free to download.
Oh yeah, I'll say now. There's a link in the show notes. You can download the digital copy of the book for free. There will be hard copies coming shortly, which I'll be getting.
Yes, in a week or two. Yeah.
But can we move on to Moses, the Moses story, who he was?
Oh yes. But that's a great example of a scholar's not bothering to check. Again, we're always told Moses didn't exist. Moses didn't exist. Look at the dates. I haven't got the video, obviously, but for my birthday, I got the Annals of the World by James Ussher, the classic one, the one that we're supposed to say was utter garbage. The early dates are pretty good. You test them; it matches Sumer year by year. It's a very, very accurate. The Bible version matches the history of Sumer. Anyway, when it comes to Moses, if you look at the dates when Moses was born, there was a very, very famous guy called Moses, Yah Moses, or Iamos. Yah Moses means born. He was Pharaoh. He said, well, wait a minute, Moses was against the Pharaoh. That's when you've got to dig down and look at the actual dates and what was happening in Egyptian history, and it all makes sense. Moses was one of the most famous pharaohs ever. He had rescued the Israelites from themselves. Just data, that's why I can't get what people say this isn't historical. But the problem is they don't want to believe it because it has very, very bad implications for the Bible story. It means that basically the Israelites are the bad guys. Well, Joseph was, particularly. He was just out for conquest. Yeah, just look at the dates. And all matches up. Yah Moses was Moses.
Yah Moses. How are you spelling that?
Yeah. Well, the official pronoun is Iamos. Iamos the first, was it? It's in the book. But it just means Yah Moses. Moses means was born. Yah means the moon god.
What does the Egyptian history say about Yah Moses?
He was just a very important. Yes, he was the one who defeated the Hyksos. That's right. Remember the Hyksos? Who the dates again match up exactly with when the Israelites were in Egypt. But the problem is they were bad, and the Israelites present themselves as good. The last guy, the Pharaoh, because they had their own pharaohs as well. When it says Moses versus Pharaoh, we're talking about Moses from the southern, Upper Egypt, versus Moses from the Pharaoh from Moses. Moses was the Pharaoh of Upper Egypt, i.e. the south.
Yep.
And he was then versus the Hyksos Pharaoh, Pep something. Who was a nasty piece of work, as you can tell out. Basically, his name means Satan, It's awful person. Rescued them. But yeah, he was when he kicked out the Hyksos. So you're seeing the Egyptian version of the story, and suddenly you realise why it was they named Pharaoh who didn't know the Pharaoh of the Exodus, and why it was they never gave us much detail.
So I think
Israel do one, yes.
I think the name Hyksos relates to herding. They were seen as like herdsmen or sheep herders or something.
Yes.
And they're often thought to have been Israelites.
Yes.
Yes.
The dates match up precisely.
So are we saying that Moses wasn't an Israelite? He was an Egyptian?
Well, it depends how you define Israelite. I mean, Israelite just don't say herd. Now,
sorry?
Moses...
Say again.
Moses... I mean, Israelites... Well, Hebrew, sorry. Hebrew meant,
that's the word I was looking for, sorry.
Yeah. I mean, because now of being your father and your grandfather and so on, it's by lineage. But originally, it just meant...
Too touchy a subject, this. Too touchy a subject, the censoring, Chris.
Yeah, should we talk
YouTube gods?
Should we talk about football for a bit?
You started, as soon as we got into Hebrews...
It was shut down.
It was shut down. Yeah.
Anyway, Stig's asking a question. I don't know if this is a legit question, but I'm getting some small heat. How did Mount Moses get its name? Is that a joke?
Mount Moses.
Yeah, is this a joke that I don't understand? Phil shaking his head.
No, it isn't Mount Moses unless you mean Mount Horeb or Sinai.
I don't know.
I've never heard of Mount Moses.
No.
I think Stig's trolling.
Yeah, I think he might be. I think he might have had a gin by now.
He's a bourbon guy, not gin.
Whatever. Same thing, isn't it?
But in answer to your question about how he was a Hebrew, how he was a Levite, these things are descriptions. If you look at the life actually matches. I mean, it's quite a good description of the kind of person he was at that particular time. It's all a look. But they weren't lineage. Later on, they were his lineage. But Levite, for example, but most other was very famous.
We've lost you, Chris. Chris, we've lost you again. Unfortunately, it's going all
choppy.
Yeah, you've gone all AI on us. Unfortunately,
see, a lot of people in the alternative history kind of world like to connect Moses with Akhenaten, and that he was like as a form of monotheism, Akhenaten establishing monotheism, and there was a famous Egyptian temple ruin found up a mountain somewhere with monatomic gold everywhere and such things. But you're not of that belief. You think Akhenaten's just not related at all.
Akhenaten was. Oh God, I'm trying to find it now. I'm trying to see if I'm getting mixed up with the.
Have you moved your phone,
Yes,
Chris?
that's right.
Have you moved your phone?
I can hear you perfectly. I think I'm in the same place.
There we go. You come back.
Back again.
Your audio's come back now.
Yeah. Well, the dates don't match up. I'm very much based on the dates. The date for Akhenaten is too late. I'm not impressed with just parallels. Parallels everywhere. I want to make sure the dates actually match. That's what I'm getting at. But for Akhenaten, he's really interesting for Atlantis. You have to look at the Atlantis book for that one. That's another topic.
Right.
That's one of the ways you can date the fall of Atlantis. But yeah, no, I don't really link it with Moses because the dates don't match. To me, the dates matter a lot.
Why
if you're not going to, sorry.
Why do people choose to forget Moses rather than just being ignorant? Would you say?
It's embarrassing, extremely embarrassing.
Right.
That's a huge failure. They got everything they wanted. The Israelites, they conquered the greatest nation on earth, and it was a shit show. It just went tits up, as they say. It was awful. And they finally had to. It's very much like the same thing happened under the 1,000 years later under the Maccabees. And when the Maccabees defeated the Greeks, and it became such a mess, so much infighting, they had to ask Romans to come in and save them. Well, the same thing happened under Moses. They conquered Egypt. It was such a mess, and such horrible rulers. They hated each other. And they finally had to ask the other Egyptians, "Can you come and sort this out, please?" And it's very, very embarrassing. So they just don't talk about it. I mean, that is if we just trust history. I mean, like I say, I'm a great believer in dates. The dates match up very neatly. The names are the same. Things are happening, but it isn't the way you were told.
I'm struggling, to be honest, with the audio's it's got worse, hasn't it, the last 10 minutes or so.
Oh, no.
It went all right.
It doesn't.
It went all right for a little bit, didn't it? And then
yeah, it's mobile phone signal. I think it has to be.
Yeah. Well, we had it by now. I mean, what can I say? The Bible's all true, but it's not what you think. That's what one thing I want to point out, in case we get lost in tally, I also think the second coming actually happened, but the Council of Nicaea had a lot of chance more.
The second coming.
I got second coming and Council of Nicaea. That were the only words I heard.
Did it happen? Did you say?
Oh, well,
it did happen. Did you say?
Yes.
Oh, right.
Yes.
Okay.
Exactly what they said it would.
The second coming happened.
Right.
Yes.
According to who?
Well, according to me, I'm just pointing out that William Miller. I hope we got a good signal here, because this is one of the things that really tickles me. I was brought up to believe loads of people have predicted the days of the second coming, and it's all been wrong. Now, if you believe the Council of Nicaea, then yeah, the Council of Nicaea, it took 400 years of councils, Nicaea just being the most famous, decide exactly what the relationship with Jesus and God. Because the Bible is very clear. Christ was just a spirit, a feeling you got of being chosen. The chrism, you felt you got the chrism, you got the anointing oil, and you were anointed by God and chosen by God for some reason. Anybody could be a Christ. You just meant a Messiah, a chosen one. Anybody could be chosen. It was just a feeling. Whereas when Christianity was invented, especially the next 100 years, in order to have power over other people, they had to make Jesus into a Superman of just him person. He then represented God, and then you represented Jesus, and therefore you had power. It was all about power. And the Council of Nicaea is also, and that's why we think of the second coming as being a guy descending out of the sky. It wasn't supposed to be that. This was supposed to be the Messianic age, the age of the Logos, which is another thing they've changed. They made us something special. Logos is different logic. The age of logic. It was the age when the king began to fall. And if you look at the actual predictions, I mean, for one thing, you're not going to have predictions about Christ in the Old Testament. I'm sorry, Christians, but you're not. It was the Messianic age. And the way it describes it, it fits in really well with inventions of Netflix. That's spoiler alert here. It might sound crazy, but you just go back to the original predictions.
Sorry, it's
Yeah.
it's getting sort of
Yeah,
really hard now to tell what you're saying.
Yeah, it's
That's
really
right.
I
difficult.
think we're gonna have to
That's
pull
all
the
right.
plug.
Yeah.
yeah, that's fine.
And
Thank you for being so patient with me.
You'll just have to
It's
come
not,
back another time and do the entire thing again.
Yeah, we'll you know.
Well, I've got to make sure I can get the audio working on my laptop. I just don't know what is happening there.
Yeah, I
Yes.
think if we could, imagine if we could get a laptop, a separate mic, or the laptop mic working, it would be better because it's never been this bad before, and I think it's probably down to the mobile phone signal.
Yeah.
But it's quite tiring. I'm finding it tiring to try and, I'm trying to piece together the bits, what you're saying without hearing it all, if you know what I mean. And it's
It's like the Dead Sea Scrolls.
yeah, good one. But yeah, thanks for. I think we should wrap it up. And I mean, my intention was to get you back soon anyway to talk about the prophecy book.
Yes. Yeah, I better get it finished then, hadn't I?
Yeah. Yeah, but
no, it's 99% finished.
oh, good.
So next week then.
Yeah.
Ooh.
I mean, it might be that just trying again on a different day, it would be better. It's it could be atmospheric issues we're having.
Yes, it could be, couldn't it? Could be the ether.
It is actually quite wet here. I mean, we have like 5 miles of cable before we get to the nearest exchange here. Because I'm using Wi-Fi calling. This isn't going through the air, Brian. And it literally can get wet in the junction box,
Right.
like a mile down the road, and it can be as simple as that.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I think we should let you go, Chris, and try and sort out another date soon so that we can carry on, and hopefully we can get the gremlins ironed out, if that's all right with you.
Yeah, and apologies to all the listeners, and thank you for being so patient.
There you are.
Yeah, thanks for the super chat, Stig, as well. All $19. We answered one of them, didn't we? So, and Stig's got something coming out, I think. I think might want us to do a shout out.
All right. Well, just follow it's at Stig, isn't it? Or is
at Stig, but he was in his on his other channel, I think.
I don't think he's got more than one channel.
Well,
but
maybe not. I don't know. Unless someone was pulling our leg. Where did he say it here? There was one. No. There we are, that one. If that's real. No?
That's talking about Chris's book.
The Chris's book, there we go.
Yeah, Chris's Atlantis book.
There we go.
Yeah. Nice to see people in the chat.
Yeah.
Right, Chris, we're going to let you go. And we'll hopefully reconvene soon and get a better connection. Okay.
Yes.
But thanks for your time. Thanks for joining us. It's just a bit of a shame, but hopefully people listening got something out. They're able to, get
fill
most
in the
of
blanks.
Yeah. Just download the book and choose a chapter you like, and
there we go.
Yeah. Well, we'll talk about it. We'll let you go, and then we'll keep the stream going and have a little break, and then we can talk about it.
Okay.
Just us. We can have a little chat for half an hour or something before we go.
Okay then.
All right. All right, Chris. Nice to hear
See
from
you.
you.
Thanks very much.
And take care.
Yeah.
See you in a bit.
Bye.
Bye. There we go. Oh, what a shitter.
I know, yeah.
I've been so excited about this podcast because one of my favourite guests.
One of your favourite guests ever.
Yeah, all my favourite sort of subjects rolled into one, but
what's
it's just
that?
The technology gods. The city is against us. They knew they were having someone speak out against the technocracy.
Oh, right, okay.
The robots.
The city gods.
Yeah.
The city AI.
The big men, the Lugols.
Yes.
Are shutting us down.
As always. Yeah.
Anyway, we're not going to do a part 2. We'll just keep the stream live and just mute ourselves while we have a quick comfort break, and then we can relax and have a chat then. I found that so tiring.
Yeah.
Like trying to piece in the bits when he broke up. I need a pee and a
poo
and a rest for a minute.
Right, okay.
We can.
He's gonna rest his brain.
Yeah, I'll just keep this going.
And then we'll tell you about cities and AI and stuff.
Yeah. Okay. Back in 5 minutes.
they don't know what the fuck they're doing. Do you understand that?
Get on with it. Yes, get on with it.
Do you really hate people who are late?
Why can't they be on time? It's no excuse.
Hello, Diane. I understand you're an empath. I'm a very sensitive man myself. I'm doing a thesis on interspecies mating rituals. Would you care to join me in some empirical research?
I honored a group of trailblazing artists with National Medals of Arts and Humanities. The group included groundbreaking Asian Americans like Vera Wang and Joan Shingang, I'm going to pronounce it, Shanga Kawawa. I think I pronounced it correctly. Shingang, I'm going to pronounce it, Shanga.
So swimmy, slippy, slappy, slimming.
Shanga.
They're the ones that get played at the end. Artrovids.
He just kept talking in one long, incredibly unbroken sentence, moving from topic to topic so that no one had a chance to interrupt. It was really quite hypnotic.
Hi, I'm Kiko. I'm 23. I go to UCSB and I also bartend.
Hey.
Ohan Mabugi. I watched episode 4, A New Hope, recently.
Oh.
With the inserted CGI atrocities that George Lucas put in the 2000s.
I saw a human version of Jabba the Hutt.
That was on the screen just then?
No, it was so I assume he must have replaced him with a puppet.
Oh yeah, they had a stand-in actor, didn't they? Who Harrison Ford was acting at.
Yeah, but he was all in. He wasn't like just in
costume.
a schmuck.
He was
like it looked like a genuine
Hutt.
Yeah, guy. It wasn't like a slug.
A big man, a Lugol.
Yeah, I think he might have been one of the aliens that bought it in the cantina.
Really?
Thinking about his face now, actually, yeah. Oh. I think he was the piggy-looking man with the in the bar. Piggy man face. Alien.
He doesn't like you either, that guy.
Maybe, yeah.
He lost an arm.
Yeah, I think it's him, actually, that I saw in the video.
I'm wanted on 10 systems.
Maybe that guy, yeah. Yeah.
He doesn't like you.
What's that? Play it again.
I don't like you either.
Terrifying.
So we just kept it rolling, just kept the stream rolling. Don't know if any of you are still there.
Yes, the chat's lighting up as usual.
Good.
All 3 people are there.
Nice to see Stig here, at Stig on YouTube.
Yeah, thanks for all of the money, Stig, again.
Has he donated a lot?
$19 in total.
Hong Kong dollars or Australian dollars or greenbacks?
Taiwan, isn't it? I think it's
Taiwan.
Yeah. He was there, wasn't he? Taiwanese dollars.
I saw a video he posted. I followed Twig
Twig?
Fucking hell, it's been a long weekend. I followed Stig vehemently when he was at Cosmic Summit. He was posting on Twitter a lot.
Right.
And someone posted a video of him conversing with some Chinese people.
In Chinese?
It was fascinating.
In Cantonese? In Mandarin?
I don't know. I wouldn't know. I don't know any of these foreign languages.
So was he talking a foreign language?
Was he?
Yeah. Was he?
Yeah. He used to teach it.
I thought he taught English.
Yeah, yeah, but I mean, you gotta, if you're talking to Chinese people, teaching to Chinese people, you got to be able to speak both, haven't you?
No, because then how do you learn?
Oh, right, okay.
So you just go in full bore English.
Yeah.
And then they just got to hold on, haven't they? And if they, the ones that are there at the end of the lesson are the winners.
I wish I could have gone to Cosmic Summit. It would have been great. Loads of our ex-guests were there.
No, yeah, we could have pressed the flesh, couldn't we?
There was a panel with Gary from Nerdrotic and Stig and Nikki Anna.
Mm-hmm.
I think George might have been on it as well.
He runs it, doesn't he?
He set it up, yeah. A couple of years ago was the first one.
Right.
And
is it like a big deal now?
I'm sure it is. A huge deal in the sort of younger Dryas, nerd realm.
Thought circle. Is that lad from Australia go? It's an Australian who came on our
Mark
show.
Young was there.
Yeah.
Is he from lad? That fucking PhD.
He's a lad, isn't he?
Is he a lad?
I thought he was probably younger than us.
Yeah. Well, that's not saying a lot now, is it?
No, but
these days. But
when you think of a lad,
yeah, I think like an 18-year-old.
Oh right. Well, he wasn't 18, was he? He was maybe in his 20s, maybe.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
I would
fair
guess.
enough. Yep. Yeah. Mark was there. He did a presentation.
Yeah.
Probably on microspherules.
I imagine so.
I think it was based on sort of inauthenticity, if that's the word, in science.
Oh.
The way just the academic attitude of shunning and disgracing people who are heretics.
Mm-hmm.
Like these people never read a bit of history, haven't read about Galileo and various other people who
made stuff up.
Burn him! He's unorthodox!
Yeah.
God, they're so uptight.
Happens over and over again, doesn't it?
Just in case you didn't hear before, Chris Tolworthy's book is free to download, and the link is in the show notes for the Tedder Game website. There's a link there to a PDF. You can download the whole 500-odd page book for free.
Mm-hmm.
I'll be getting a hard copy. I really love Chris's writing. His Jack Kirby books, right up there, one of my favourite books. Yeah, covers all the subjects that I'm interested in. A lot of the subjects I'm interested in. So I can't wait for to get a copy of this one and dive in.
Right.
And I'm going to pick up the other two as well, obviously.
Yeah. So how many books are out now?
I think only one is out in digital form, but he's written 3.
That's what I mean, yeah.
So there's 3 going to be coming out over the next few months, couple of months, hopefully.
Right.
And we said when we were emailing that I would like to get him back. One of the books is on prophecy, which kind of ties into the first book I read of his, the Jack Kirby, Predicting the Future.
Yeah.
Chris, 2026 is the year, by the way.
For
the end of civilization as we know it.
Right, okay. Is that why he's living in the highlands in the forest?
Maybe. Yeah. I have a lot of sympathy with this point of view that we've gone backwards.
Yeah.
Like the micro statement which I make is that life was better before iPhones. I think you can just keep rolling that back. Keep rolling it back. Life was better before electricity.
Before electricity?
Life was better without cars.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I agree with Chris. The golden age is true. It's not a myth. Life was better. People were happier. You mentioned the mutiny on the bounty,
Yeah, there was a question that I didn't get a chance to ask, but then I kind of quashed it in my own head, which was, well, if you came across other societies, I suppose I was thinking about maybe like South America, but they were living in cities, weren't they? And possibly engaged.
Yeah, it's all post-city.
Yeah.
The Mayan cities, hundreds of thousands of
occupants
now. It's been revealed through LiDAR.
Yeah.
contemporary of accounts from the age of exploration, from like the Spanish priests, were saying the same thing, but discredited.
Yeah,
as
that was going
make-believe.
down the Amazon, wasn't it?
Well, we're superior. The West is best, so we can't have civilization in this, this pristine South America. It was brushed under the carpet, but modern technology is revealing it to have been true.
Yeah,
and I imagine fairly brutal. We hear stories about sacrifice and whatnot at the top of Chichen Itza.
We've all watched Apocalypto, haven't we?
Yep.
Obviously.
Yeah. But I think the overall message I'm totally down with. I think I would rather be a Stone Age man.
A Golden Age man.
Than a Silicon Age man.
We're bringing back the Golden Age.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, well, it comes down to happiness, doesn't it? And I think stress is probably the biggest killer for us in civilization, as it's been labelled.
Yeah.
And
the biggest predictor for your happiness is having the greatest distance between
me and your wife.
Yeah, well, in your case, is around. Oh, I'm gonna mash this up now.
Go on, mash it up. Fresh.
The biggest distance between the amount you earn or you need to work, essentially, to earn the money you need to survive, or something like that. But it doesn't sound right as I'm saying it. So, essentially, if you keep your outgoings low and you only need to work a little bit and you have a cushion, then
that's happiest.
That translates.
Imagine if you didn't have to earn anything.
That's what I mean. Yeah, exactly. So that's what I mean.
Croesus of Lydia has got a lot to answer for.
Croesus?
King Croesus.
For making the money?
Rich as Croesus, yeah. I'm not sure it's accurate, but he's often credited as the inventor of metal coinage.
Yeah.
What were we saying? When was he? 400 BC, I want to say. Maybe a bit further back.
Really?
A bit further back.
I thought it would be earlier than that to have coins.
Yeah. I'm not
just pulling it out of your arse.
Not an ancient history expert. Right. Well, Lydia was conquered by Cyrus the Great, wasn't it?
Right.
So that is going to be before the Babylonian conquest. Would it? No, it's going to be contemporary. It's going to be shortly after the Babylonian conquest, which was 583 BC, I want to say, off the top of my head. So it could be, it's going to be mid-6th century BC, I'm going to say. That coinage was allegedly invented by Croesus around that time.
And we're saying before that it was bartering then?
To a large extent.
And trade?
Yeah. Well, the thing is, it's tokenization.
Right.
So you'd still use metal and swap things, but I think he's created, a coinage as being like a store of wealth then, isn't it?
Right, okay.
It's tokenized.
Yeah.
And easier divisible.
Right.
I don't know. What do I know? Nothing is what I...
Well, yeah, so...
The only thing I do know is that I know nothing.
What was the term that they definitely not did during the nonsense?
They definitely not did?
Yeah, that they did in the Roman Empire, and it caused hyperinflation, where they debased... Is it called debasing the...
Coin clipping.
Is that what they call it?
Debasing the currency.
Is that what they say? When they take out... They melt it all down and take... So if it's silver, and they reduce the silver content down to from 20 to 10 to 5,
Yeah, when the Roman Emperor was going in the... When the empire was going in the bin, things were tough economically because the fucking stinky Praetorian Guard and all that were always wanting more and more cash.
Yeah.
They would clip the edges of the coins and then melt down the clippings to create new coins. Or, they would debase, would be mixing other metals, so the silver content of a silver denarii would drop. They'd mix it in with, copper or tin probably. And then, devaluing the currency. That causes inflation.
Yes.
Because everyone knows
it's not worth the same.
Yeah. A pound coin today isn't a pound of anything in weight.
No.
It's just a unit that's used. But currency is essentially a store of energy. You put your energy into something.
Yeah.
8 hours a day, generally, for most of us. And then you're rewarded with this
token
promissory note.
Yeah. It's not even a real note anymore, is it?
No.
And it actually, you know, 40% of it's taken, for me anyway, or whatever.
Yeah.
At point
source.
of payments, yeah.
And then every time you spend it, they take a little bit more.
Yeah.
With your VAT or your sales taxes or whatnot.
Yeah.
Life is a scam.
Yeah.
Yeah. Adding a bit of fractional reserve banking. Adding a bit of fractional reserve banking.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
All your life turns out to be worth fuck all because they can print it at will, create it out of thin air, the banksters.
Yes.
Oh, you want to borrow £100,000? No problem. Give us 10 and we'll sort you out. We'll just create it out of thin air. That money didn't even exist.
Well, that was the other thing when we were talking about when I mentioned about perpetual growth. Have you seen the debt figures?
No, go on. Excite me.
Well,
whose debt? The UK's debt?
Just, you know, the entire Western Hemisphere.
Right.
Like pretty much all countries are over 100% the debt to GDP value, basically.
And that GDP number is a scam as well.
Yes, because it has home value in it, doesn't it? House price.
It has all sorts of nonsense in it.
But I think the surprise, well, not surprising because it's been all over the news, but what America's, the USA's debt is, I'm pretty sure their debt's over 100% of GDP. So like trillions.
Yeah.
13 trillion. Is their GDP like 13 trillion?
All right, I don't know.
Yeah.
Could be.
I think it is. And their debt is 13 trillion.
Build back better.
Yeah. Did he not do something recently about, and like they've forecast that it's going to cost like $1 trillion or something, these budget changes that he's made. I don't get it.
I think they're going to mint $1 trillion coin and put it in the Federal Reserve.
Are you being serious?
Yeah. Because you just make it up. It's just inflationary. It just means that your pension, your savings, your assets, your house, your car will be worthless.
Right. Okay.
Worthless, sorry.
Yeah.
It's a sham. That's why I'm so totally with Chris on like trying to get out of this system, man. Try and live as separate from it as possible, you know. Try and extricate yourself from it.
Those communes sound good, don't they?
Oh.
Like where you go, we talk about this all the time, where they buy these stately homes and you have to work like 30 hours in the commune and then like whatever you work in order for your cash.
Yeah.
That sounds all right, doesn't it?
It's sort of, I would say maybe it's a step in the right direction. You know, as long as there's less than 150 in the commune. Otherwise, it's war.
Yes. Otherwise, there has to be a king. I suppose that's the other thing that was on my mind, and I couldn't quite ask because I couldn't find the opportune moment. It was, I suppose, I know he says like it's 150, isn't it? And
Dunbar's number, Robin Dunbar.
Yeah, to get to the, like, you know, we need someone in charge or whatever. But I suppose what's always in my mind is people's tendencies, I guess, to take advantage, I suppose. You know, when I was saying about, you know, we all have good and bad qualities. And like cities obviously you could argue play to our bad qualities in terms of, you know.
The motivations, yeah.
Yeah. So, you know, the type of person that would rise to the top to begin with. You know, you always say, don't we, about the type of person who would actually want to run a country, for example.
Shitbags.
Yeah, and why that would appeal to someone.
And the system is set up in a way that it rewards shitty behavior. So, you know, being a psychopath is advantageous in the world of politics or
business,
high-end business.
Yeah.
You know, like, I wouldn't say business because your fruit and veg seller on the market isn't likely a psychopath.
Well, I don't know, man.
When you get to sort of multinational corporations and that sort of thing where...
Yeah. Maybe over an organization, over 150 people,
well,
maybe.
Obviously, yeah.
Maybe.
Again, there's less people in the organization. It's easier to fool them.
Yes.
You know? if you have a small business of 10
Everyone
people,
will know you and know that you're a nonsense.
Yeah, you're a twat. He's a twat.
Yeah.
You get found out.
Yeah.
But in the corporate world, you can just sort of slide by, to the top. Stand on anyone's head you need to climb that greasy pole.
There was a person I used to work with in another job, and he told me a story about some kind of American businessman, and using Dunbar's number, because I think I mentioned that we went to go and watch his lecture at the uni. And he said that it basically, when it got to 150, he would open another factory and start again and replicate the factory in exactly the same way until it had 150 people. Then he'd open another one and then another one, rather than say, right, we need to get rid of this smaller factory and have a huge factory with 3,000 people in. He just replicated it all over because he found that like that it's impossible to keep track of, basically, and it's rubbish for morale and things like that.
Yeah, it makes sense to me that you'd have sort of an Ubermensch at each factory who was in charge of that, oversaw that 150, and therefore he'd be able to have. You see, I don't know, because your Ubermensch factory leader, already has people in his Dunbar list before his workers.
Oh, right.
So I don't know. I don't know if that works.
Yeah,
to be
I suppose that's a good point, isn't it?
How many can obviously there's variation. Dunbar's number isn't a law of psychology. It's a range, probably. I think he argued.
I can't remember.
And there are spheres within the Dunbar number, isn't there? Like there's your immediate. I think it was maybe 3 or 10 people who you can really know, like inside. You feel you really know them. And then as the numbering, there's like concentric circles of relationships.
Yeah.
Because I wanted to ask him about pets.
Oh, right.
Do pets play a role in Dunbar's number? Because they take up their part of your family when you have a pet. So does that fill a space in your Dunbar thingy? But I didn't have the guts to ask him because I thought they'd laugh at me.
You laugh at you every week, though. What's new?
Hey, I went to Sheep Farm Live yesterday.
You did, didn't you? It was like a 12-hour day of work for you, by the sounds of it.
It wasn't. I was tired. At the end. I had to come home.
Yeah.
But it was good. Good experience. Met new people. Lots of new people there.
Did people recognise you that you didn't know this time?
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. I was at the bar. And,
at the bar?
Yeah. Someone said, do you want to meet a real Russian? And I went, duh. And it was Simon Mir.
Mir? As in the space station?
No, as in like Mir's carpets.
Oh.
But he's on the newsletter list.
Oh,
I remembered his name from the email list.
Right, okay, good for Simon. Was it Simon?
Simon Mir.
Simon Mir.
Yeah, there's a few people there who listened.
Right.
Owls was there, Alia.
Right, okay.
Gave me a big bag of goodies.
Okay.
A jumbone for Zeus.
Oh,
right. Have you seen these plastic? I don't know if Nerf makes them, or a company like Nerf. They're like a flat disc, and you throw it, and it turns into a ball.
Oh,
it collapses into a ball and a disc thing.
We bought one of those, and it was the most disappointing thing we bought.
Did you throw like a girl?
It just can't get it to
You
work.
wet lettuce.
I know, yeah.
Matthew, you wet lettuce.
Yes, it's just ringing in my ears.
I'm giving him PTSD from primary school.
Yeah.
Mr. Hansen.
Couldn't get it working.
What's wrong with your legs, Matthew? Can you not run? Can you not throw?
No. Yeah.
Sorry, come.
Can't get it to work. Can't get it to work.
Right, okay.
For some reason, I don't know why.
I've got 2.
Oh,
2 from Alia, so we're going to take them on holiday in a couple of weeks when we go.
Yeah.
We've got some big open spaces to throw balls.
Yeah.
Or discs, whatever shape they are.
Yeah.
And we've got some organic sweeties.
Oh.
And yeah, some bits and bobs. I got sheep. Christian from Sheep Farm has a brand of accessories. You call them sculptured, hand painted accessories called gaping gobs.
Mm-hmm.
He has an Etsy store. If you go to sheepfarm.uk or whatever it is, sheepfarm.co.uk, I'm sure there's a link there to Chris's Etsy store. And I got this Sheep Farm bottle opener, which is pretty spectacular, isn't it?
It is, yeah. It's weighty as well.
It's, yeah.
You could probably
kill someone with it.
Well, I was going to say you could use it for home defense, couldn't you?
Yeah.
Just smash someone over the head with that. I mean, obviously, you wouldn't. I was trying to figure out what it was made from. I thought it was made from wood, but is it resin or something?
Marble.
Right, okay.
He makes it with pounding stones and copper chisels.
Does he?
Yeah.
Right, okay.
Like the Egyptians did, like when they built them pyramids there.
Yeah.
That's how he does it.
Yeah. Beautiful.
Yeah.
Big, beautiful sheep.
Yeah, Dom and Chris did a presentation.
Yeah.
First, like an hour, and then there was a break, and then Mark Devlin did a presentation all about 80s pop videos.
Right.
Occult symbolism in 80s pop videos.
Yeah.
Like Queen was there, It's a Hard Life, a handful. All had checkerboard floors in them.
Yeah, there is in the 80s, isn't there? Yeah. A checkerboard theme.
And he said, just so you know, 80s video and music producers, other types of flooring are available other than the checkerboard floors.
Did you lol at that bit?
Yeah, it's good. It's a good line.
Yeah.
Yeah, lots of weird 80s pop videos. Kind of satanic and playing into sort of giving the wink at SRA, satanic ritual abuse.
Oh, right. Okay.
And a bit of MK Ultra shit in there. Not Mockingbird, Monarch program.
There was a big
Mind
thing,
control.
wasn't there, in the 80s about satanic ritual murderers?
Yeah.
That was a thing, wasn't it?
So Mark has interviewed, through his book, I think, he's interviewed survivors.
Right.
And what some of the slides he had up were from interviews of these people describing what was in the videos and saying, yeah, this is why, because this is what happened to me. Kind of thing. Yeah, it's creepy, but it ended with some funny notes. He lightened the mood.
Oh, thank God.
After all that, with some clips, some funny YouTube clips.
How long was it on for?
I think the doors opened at 12:30, and did it finish about 8:30, 9 o'clock?
Oh, right. It's a solid
full
8
day.
hours.
Yeah. John Hamer was there as well, doing a presentation on evolution.
Right.
And then there's a Q&A at the end as well for
Right.
I don't know, an hour, 45 minutes, an hour. So yeah, it was chocker.
Good.
Chocker block day.
Was it busy?
About 120, I think.
Right.
I think Dom said went. The second one, so they did one at the same place a couple of months. Was it June maybe?
Right.
Or May? I think it was May. And that one sold out, so they put on this one.
Right.
And the next one's in London. They're London.
Yeah.
It's Backyard Comedy Club, I think. I think that's is it August? I think that might be August.
Right.
With Devlin again. So it's good. It was nice to meet people, and got a new guest out of it as well. Going to have a guest coming on hopefully soon.
Right.
Talking about all that off-grid living. A bit like, ties into what Chris was saying, about sort of escaping the system. And I'm not sure how we're going to approach it yet. It's going to be sort of, hopefully it's going to be like off-grid for dummies. Like
our level.
Well, let's face it, most of us and the people watching are living in the cities or in suburbia. Where the hell do you start? So that's
that kind of life really appeals to me, but I don't know if it appeals to me because it's like fantasy and escapism.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? The grass is greener. Exactly, that's what I mean.
Escaping. That's the thing.
Yeah.
A lot of
my job mainly.
Well, a lot of the things that we're forced to do are unfulfilling. Deep down. And we don't have the freedom to sort of escape that.
Yes.
So,
But this is the thing. I'd like to buy a house that you could set up so that it was kind of self sufficient. So you could potentially dig a borehole and get groundwater and filter it. That'd be quite easy, I imagine, and a pump and set that up. You could potentially use solar, couldn't you, and a bit of wind to charge batteries, maybe.
Nuclear.
You get a modular nuclear reactor from Rolls-Royce. That'd set us up pretty tight.
Yeah, it's like, what do you know? It depends if you want to still be connected to like the slave system, though, doesn't it? Once you're in that system, what do you care about what Keir Starmer said this morning at PMQs? It all becomes irrelevant, doesn't it?
Yeah.
A lot of it, anyway. I can see like, oh, well, I'd like to be on Facebook so I can keep in touch with my cousin in Australia, for example. But, other than things like that, what do you need? It's pretty much bread and circuses, man. It's entertainment because it's feeding that need that people have when they get home from work. They're completely exhausted and they just want to sit in a comfortable chair and be entertained. With the sports ball or whatever it is this week, or pottery bake off. That's what I call knitting.
It's when you watch TV, you go. Do you go into the alpha brainwave state? Am I making that up? The relaxed state.
I don't know.
It's mesmerizing.
Does it not depend what you're watching?
Well, no. Well, I don't know. If you're absorbed by it, I think you do get into a state of relaxation through watching television. It is mesmerizing, I think. I can certainly be mesmerized by it anyway. It's my personal experience of TV.
My missus is watching something called, I think it's called Rizzoli and Lynch or something like that.
Risotto and Lynch.
It's a cop show on some shit platform. Right, really low budget. I think Joe Mantegna's in it, though, as an old man.
Yeah. The one who was going out with that woman, that South American woman.
Oh, I don't know much about his personal life.
Right.
American woman.
I think he was married to her, actually. The one from...
Eva Longoria?
Yeah.
Joe Mantegna was married to her.
Am I thinking of Joe Mantegna?
Joe Mantegna he does the voice of the mafia guy in The Simpsons.
No, it's not him.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not
Fat
him.
Tony, the voice of Fat Tony.
Right, I can't remember. I can't put a face to him.
No.
Oh, I do. Yes, I do know what he looks like.
He's been in a few gangster movies.
Yeah, I think I know what he looks like. It's not him. No.
Yeah, but honestly, it's the basest drivel I've ever seen. It's so terrible.
Yeah, you're scraping the back. This is the thing. If you watch hours and hours of TV,
you run out.
Yeah, you definitely run out.
There's only so much quality stuff. Like we were talking at Sheep Farm, I was talking to some lads there about Game of Thrones. And we were talking about how good it was in places, where it dropped off, and we talked about House of the Dragon and stuff. And, to me, that's a world of difference from 95% of the stuff that's broadcast. Talking about drama, fiction, content. There are levels of shit, and there's good shit, mediocre shit, and terrible shit. And I don't think it's an issue to have a bit of a guilty pleasure and indulgence. But if it's good, it's just a tendency to waste your time watching drivel, and it's just on in the background.
We've been watching Sopranos again. I think it's the third time.
Third time? How many episodes is there in Sopranos?
I don't know. I think there's 6 series. And I think, I know the first series had 13 episodes.
Yeah, 40 minutes a piece.
No, they're like an hour,
Are
I
they?
think. 50 minutes an hour. But it's so good. It's
quality.
Yeah. It's the only TV program I've watched more than once.
Yeah.
All the way through and enjoyed it each time I've watched it.
Bit of a weird synchronicity that, because the shit buddy cop thing my missus is watching.
She's watched it before.
The main character's mother is Tony's shrink, the psychiatrist.
Oh, right, okay.
From The Sopranos.
Right.
A really good actress.
Yeah, she is good.
In
She's
a
good
terrible role.
She was the Goodfellas wife as well. She got an Oscar for that.
And Goodfellas. I don't remember her in Goodfellas.
She was the wife of Ray Liotta.
Right.
And she won an Oscar, yeah.
Michael Madsen died.
He did, didn't he? Yeah.
Yeah. I thought he was already dead.
Yeah, I don't know. I think he was a hard-living type of
Maybe
person.
it's Ray Liotta I'm getting confused.
Yeah, Ray Liotta died, didn't he, before, a while ago, yeah. A couple of years ago, maybe. But anyway, going back to, like, living off-grid, going back into my fantasy land, there is a person I've seen on YouTube who has got around sort of, he somehow bought some land somewhere, like quite a few acres, and he's got around planning, because it originally came with no planning permission, like no chance of getting planning on it. And there was some kind of loophole around if you have, so it's bought as farmland, and if you're using it for farmland, and I think he was raising chickens to begin with, that you're allowed a building in addition to like the chicken hut or whatever.
Yeah.
And he built a roundhouse, and then he slowly just added and added. And he talks about it on his channel, basically.
Not Nigel.
No, it's not Nigel. No, it's another guy.
Nigel Howard.
I suppose the only thing with it was that some people tried to. I don't know if they found out, where he was from like his videos on YouTube or whatever, or it just happened. But
To join him?
No, they went to come and try and rob him, basically, like in the middle of the night. I know, yeah. So, but he chased them off. Basically, he has various things there that you can chase people off with and stuff. So, and he managed to
a sheep farm bottle opener.
Yeah, basically, yeah.
I'll throw this at you. Alert.
Yeah, and things that propel things as well. But yeah, he's
trebuchet.
Yeah, trebuchet. But he's like, he's built all this stuff, and he's completely off grid.
Loose.
But like what you were saying about keeping connected, he obviously has a phone to post on YouTube, and he has to make so he makes money. Well, he used to make money selling eggs and chicken and things like that. Was like his main income source. But yeah, he's like dug a well, solar panels, a wind turbine, uses like heat stores. So he burns wood from his land and stuff, but has a huge heat store around his stove and things like that. A boiler, back boiler, that type of thing. So he's kind of done it, I think.
Yeah.
I suppose that's the thing is he's like, if you want to go off grid, the amount of power or energy you would need in order to have some mod cons. So would you want a washing machine, for example? Or would you just go to a laundrette?
Let's go native. Fig leaf.
Okay. I don't know if that's going to really work in the northwest of England, to be honest with you.
Would you need a washing machine? No.
Would you need a washing machine?
No.
No. What would you do?
In the stream.
In the stream?
Yeah. Smash them against some rocks.
Right, okay. What would you wash it with?
Water.
Just water? Right, okay. Would all your clothes be made out of wool?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Woolen boxer
woolen
shorts.
Underpants.
Yeah, from the sheepies.
Right.
Yeah, I suppose
Sheep
so.
apparently are supposed to be awful to look after. They just want to escape all the time.
Oh, that's why you need the dogs.
Yeah. And something to cage them in. Then obviously you've got like foxes. Everything will want to eat all of your livestock and things.
So you just need like a DARPA dog with a machine gun turret on its back.
Yeah.
That'll kill the foxes.
And then the other thing that this guy runs into, I suppose, is like people trying to take advantage of him in some kind of way. His good nature, I suppose. So like someone was like renting a piece of land and it had like a shipping container on it or something like that. And they refused to pay him or whatever, the rent he was owed. And then that ended up in a bit of a back and forth, shall we say. So it's that kind of thing, isn't it, I suppose? But you could eliminate that by just not interacting with people, couldn't you?
Well, only in a sort of in a voluntary manner.
Yeah.
You don't have to interact with anyone you don't want to.
No. And I'm sure we talked about this on the podcast a while ago about the guy that they found living next to a loch in Scotland.
Yeah, an old guy.
Yeah, there was a documentary. I don't know if it
was he in his 60s?
I think he was older than that, and he'd been living there for 40 years or whatever. And like the landowner just said, "Oh yeah, I know he lives there. It's just he doesn't do anything." He basically built a hut next to a loch, and he just fished for like 40 years and grew a few bits and pieces.
And he lived on his own.
Yeah,
which is kind of strange because you think that would send you mad.
Yeah,
living on your own.
I think that it was the other way around. So I think he was sent mad. From what I remember, he'd gone mad and then gone to live next to the thing, and that's what made him go sane, basically. Yeah.
Falling down.
Yeah, basically. Yeah. But he was like fine. I think basically what had happened, unfortunately, he got so old that eventually he just couldn't do the stuff to look after himself, essentially.
This is why you need some sort of clan.
Yeah.
A small clan, under 150.
Yeah.
So I would say under 100 to allow for headroom and fluctuations in birth rate.
Yeah.
I don't know how that would work for genetic variance.
That's why people used to meet up at Göbekli Tepe in the summer then, isn't it?
Get pregnant.
And shag each other.
Get everyone pregnant.
Yeah, in one big go. No shagging until Göbekli Tepe.
Or Saturnalia, or whatever it would be.
Exactly.
The May Day.
Yeah. Meet up. Have a right good
have
shag.
Yeah, tribes would meet each other and swap males, You come into, we'll take 5 of your lads. You have 5 of ours.
Oh, no, it's like the playground all over again, getting picked last.
Yeah, for a bit of genetic diversity. Otherwise you end up with extra totals and shit, don't you?
Yeah. I might got picked, though, because, I could keep myself warm with less animal skins.
Less of a drain on resources.
Exactly, yeah. Look at this guy. Look at this hair he comes with.
He'd be warm. Cheap to clothe.
Cheap to clothe, yeah. A nice, compact package. Yeah. Sturdy legs.
Compact package?
Yeah.
Is that a mushroom cock?
Why are you making it sexual?
We're talking about mating, prehistoric mating rituals.
Yeah, I just meant my stature.
Would you like to join me for some empirical research?
Yeah.
Yeah, it would be a bit of a wrench to leave your tribe to join the neighbouring tribe, wouldn't it? Leaving all that behind.
Yeah.
Maybe. Or would it be a sense of adventure?
Who knows? It depends if they had any babes over there, I suppose. Any tribe babes.
Yeah. I'm imagining plenty. Plentiful.
Are you thinking, what's her name? Babes. Sophia, is it Sophia Loren in 1000 AD or something, is it
10,000
called?
BC.
Is that, yeah, the other way around.
Okay. Oh my God. Yeah, 1000 AD.
Yeah, that's Judge Dredd, isn't it? 10,000. That's 10,000 AD. The other way again.
1000 AD is like Carolingian.
I know, yeah.
Shit going on. Roman Catholic, Holy Roman Empire. Was it 1000 AD? Or was it 900 AD when that guy was crowned pope? The big tall guy.
I don't know.
The French guy who took over Europe, unified Europe. What's he frigging called?
Begins with a C, does it?
Yeah, Charles. Not Charles the Hammer. Not Martel. Charlemagne.
I was going to say.
Charles, yeah.
Right.
Charlemagne.
Right.
He wasn't he coronated in the year 900 or something? Christmas Day.
You're thinking too much of me.
Yeah. And myself, because I can't remember. Yeah, tribe babes. I'm well up for that.
Yeah. I imagine that everybody would have been attractive and healthy.
People would have been healthier, I think.
Yeah.
Leaner.
Yeah.
More supple.
Yeah, bigger boobs.
Nubile.
Yeah.
A nubile tribal queen.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. I don't know why I just pictured Danny Minogue in my head.
Dunno.
Did she do a music video where she was wearing like a Stone Age
loincloth? Don't know. No. Pass.
Podcast is descending into madness.
No, because you know what? It's time. The sun's getting low.
Yep. It is.
And it's time to switch the stream off.
Yep, it's time to go. It's late. It's 11:15. We're back next week. I think Debbie Elliott's back, I think, next week.
Oh, yeah, we are back next week. It's the week after you're on holiday.
Week after I'm not here.
Yeah.
Yeah. DJ Elliott next week. Oh. Metaphysics and philosophy next week.
Oh.
Going down the Uspensky Gurdjieff rabbit hole.
Oh, my God.
Be good.
Book yourselves in.
Yeah, so we'll sign off. Sun's getting low. I'm tired. Ready for a big sleep.
Sun's getting low, boss.
Yeah. The tablet isn't... Oh, there it is.
There
it's
we
working. Go. Thanks for joining us in the chat and sticking with us. And we shall return next week for episode 383. Rapidly approaching 400.
I know.
What are we going to do for 400?
Should we do a take on 300 and paint some 6-packs on, but 400?
Want to go full Spartan?
Yeah.
Should we establish the Agogi?
Yes.
We put our children through that.
Yeah. Well,
Separate
no, maybe
them
not
from
the
the mothers.
pederasty, no. No. Pass.
We need a young Spartan and an old Spartan is what we need.
No.
Right, okay. We'll get your thinking caps on in the chat. Let us know what we need, or in the Element server, or via email at
It is
thearmsinquisition@gmail.com.
17 weeks away.
Yeah, probably a bit more, because we might have the odd week. Like, we're not here the odd week. So, that's nearly half a year then,
Yeah,
isn't
this is 6 months.
Shit.
It might be Christmas. Could we do it so it landed on Christmas?
I don't know.
Or the new year. The new year.
Okay, I don't know.
Okay.
We'll think about it.
Yeah.
But if you have any ideas, drop them in the chat or the email.
Okay.
Right. Sayonara. We'll see you next week. Touchy bye.
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 Are you not entertained? They don't know what the fuck they're doing. Do you understand that?
Squeeze the meat.
An orgasm